When did you realize you were being catfished? My ex-girlfriend tried catfishing me to test me. It took me about 30 seconds of looking through the profile before I realized that the name was her name backwards. The craziest thing is that she really thought it would work. That girl was bonkers. About 6 years ago, I found out my brother was a catfish. He had been catfishing this young man in the UK whilst being in America. He had fake pictures, a fake name, but his real phone number. The guy being catfished, we'll call him Lenny, would repeatedly call my brother and leave messages on our house phone. My brother and Lenny often sent each other packages of sweets. Lenny made the decision to come to America to visit since he's never been, and my brother agreed. On the day Lenny arrived in Texas, my brother told him the truth but never actually met up with Lenny. Lenny tried all week trying to convince my brother to meet him, telling him that he just wanted to know who he really was. My brother never showed up. Lenny called religiously every day for about a month, trying to get my brother back. I think he really loved him. After that, I never heard from him again. In my sophomore year of college, my friend Kerry, a 19-year-old guy, met a girl named Kelly in a chat room. They talked a lot and got close. One day, Kelly revealed that her boyfriend broke her jaw. Kerry drove to a city a few hours away to rescue her and learned that Kelly was really Kenny. Kenny beat Kerry into giving up all of his passwords, then unalived him and left his body in a field. Then Kenny impersonated Kerry online for several days in an attempt to cover his tracks. He did a bad job and got caught and deleted himself in jail before trial. I realize how this all sounds with all the names beginning with K and ending with a Y, but it's a true story. You can Google it. It really messed me up for a while. So, when I was a freshman in high school, I was big into Neopets and had a clique I ran on the boards, and we chatted off-site as well. Two of these people were Shelby and Adam, same age as myself, more or less, and dating. Adam had a sister, Kelsey I think, who was also in the clique. Well, it came to pass, as internet relationships do, that Shelby and Adam broke up, and Adam and I started talking/dating. Shelby gave us her blessing. We shared pics. He was a typical emo-looking kid, which 14-year-old me loved. We talked on the phone, only once or twice. I was very shy about it, so I didn't mind the lack of voice communication. At one point, he sent me a YouTube video of him and his friends. There wasn't much talking and it was all pretty muffled, and it sounded like they were speaking German. Later, Adam and I broke up, and it was after that the big reveal came. There was no Adam. Kelsey had made him up and been posing as him all along. I asked Shelby about it, and apparently she had found out when they'd broken up too, but Kelsey had made her promise not to tell. Gee, thanks. In short, Neopets is good for clean fun, but not dating. Yep, being on the internet pretty much my entire life has taught me that if your online activity has a social function of any sort and gets to a certain size, people will use it to date. In many cases, more successfully than this, I might add. I have to say, I don't understand what the catfishers get out of any of this, but evidently it's something because so many people do it and keep doing it. I was talking to a girl I met on Tinder, and while I have on my profile that I'm not interested in being anyone's third, she kept talking about the guy she was currently seeing and how hot he was, and didn't I want to F him with her? I eventually found her Facebook and his was a real Facebook while hers consisted of two really fake-looking photos and no actual information. So it became apparent at that point it was the guy just trying to get bi girls to do stuff with him. Oh boy, this is going to be a fun story. I used to be on Omegle, a chat site, a few times when I was 17 or so. Everyone asked ASL, which means age, male or female, and location, and most of them would disconnect when you said you were male. So at one point, I told people I was female just to be able to talk to people. Anyway, I connected to a girl and we had a great time together. We chatted for 2 hours or so because I believe we gave each other our Skype addresses. I had to create mine in a quick hurry because I didn't have a fake girly Skype address that matched my fake name. We went on to chat almost every day just for fun, and even though I knew I was lying to her by being a girl, I still had some fun, but I felt really guilty for lying to her, and I knew we couldn't meet in real life, even though we lived close to each other. One day she confessed that she was lying to me about something. That thing turned out to be that she was a guy as well. We kept contact and we had a great time together still, and we actually met each other once. He died 2 years later though, but still, good times. Not me, but my father-in-law. He lost his wife 7 years ago, and after a while was tired of having an empty house and nobody to talk to. He tried online dating, but went to a free site and got hooked. A lady who claimed she lived in Chicago started chatting him up. She was an international traveler for business. She had pics and seemed friendly enough. They chatted for a few weeks and then made plans to meet after she came back from business. He kept telling us some of the details about this amazing lady he met, but we didn't want to be too invasive, so didn't ask a lot of questions. Luckily for him, her trip back was on a holiday, Thanksgiving week. We all happened to be at his house. She was supposed to fly in on Saturday, and he kept going to his room in private to chat with her about the details of her trip. He came down all sad and said she sent him a heartbreaking message. Her plane got stuck somewhere in Europe due to weather, I forget where, and while she was waiting, her purse was stolen. She had no phone and no credit cards, no ID or no tickets. She needed him to send money so she could get back home, and she was scared and alone in a country she had never visited. If we hadn't been there, and he'd told me some of the details, which of course set off my bullcrap alarms, he would have sent her a couple of grand to get back. I explained to him the concept of catfishing, and he didn't believe me at first. I had to ask him for some more details. How's she reaching him with no phone? She claimed she was borrowing laptops at the airport. How come she never talked on the phone? She said she gets very shy on the phone and prefers using the dating site to chat. What's the flight number so we can track it coming to the USA? She provided one, but it was bunk and not stuck due to weather. When we called her out on it, she tried the emotional tactic and said she was shaking in sadness and betrayal that he couldn't trust her after she gave him her heart. She kept going for emotional responses, but stopped responding to any attempts to get actual proof from her. We stopped responding a day or two later after she messaged him one last try and claimed a friend paid for a new ticket for her, but she still needed money, a lesser amount this time, to pay some sort of fine or she'd be stuck there and could maybe go to jail. He wouldn't want her to go to jail, would he? Yeah, it sucked that it happened because he's a super trusting guy. Even a few weeks later, he wasn't for certain that she wasn't real, despite the whole family telling him it was definitely a scam. I even kind of think he sent her money in the first part of the original ticket, and the family didn't get involved until the stolen purse part of the scam. Of course, she was most likely a he, using stolen pics online. I did do an image search on one of the photos, but nothing came up. The moral of the story? If you have anyone over 50 in your life, make sure you explain to them about different types of internet scams, especially if they're into shopping, dating, meeting friends, and stuff like that. It's a whole different world than what they grew up with, and the scammers are getting very good at it. I knew a few elderly people that have been scammed over the phone, but the internet brings a whole new level of scamming. About 10 years ago, I started chatting with a guy in one of the Yoohoo chat rooms. We'd only been chatting for a few weeks when he suddenly disappeared offline for about 2 weeks. I was so worried, but then his, quote, sister contacted me and told me he'd been in a terrible motorcycle accident. He was in the ICU, but she kept in touch with me to let me know how he was. After about a month, he got back online and we talked every day. We traded pics and eventually I got on webcam to say hi. He couldn't do the same because of some issues with his computer. We talked like this for nearly 3 years. It was around this time I realized that his sister was actually him. It didn't matter though, I was besotted with him, and I mean totally head over heels. Then one day, he just disappeared. His profile was deleted, all his accounts were gone, and I haven't heard a single word from him since. I still have absolutely no idea who he or she really was, and it messed me up for a long time. I still think about it at times. I'd do anything to know the truth. I don't know, maybe his real-life partner found out or something. So I have to level with you viewers. I really don't understand these people or their victims. Like, I don't think I have the capacity to fall completely for someone who I've only talked to via a text medium online. Maybe I'm just an unromantic, more extroverted sort, which would be a surprise to me. It's fascinating to learn that this is such a big ongoing thing though. On to the next one. It was when I was a teenager, not too long after the birth of ICQ. I'd met this one person in a chat room, and things started to get more and more personal. Not too long later, they eventually broke down and admitted that they'd been lying, and that they weren't a young hot girl, but instead a man. The guy seemed really remorseful, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him that I wasn't a young hot lesbian either. This might be a little late, but I actually unintentionally catfished someone. I was playing League of Legends, and this guy added me after we played a game. His English was broken, but I didn't think much of it, and we started to duo together. We did really well, but strangely, he kept referring to me as she. Again, I didn't think twice about it, and I just kept playing with him, but eventually he started to get real creepy and told me all these things about him. We found out that there was a significant time difference between us, but he'd log on at the most ridiculous times for him just to play with me, and started to become a white knight. Whenever anyone would trash talk me, which is pretty normal for League of Legends, he'd vehemently defend me and start fights with other team members, opposing players, and whoever else. Shortly after that, he'd start saying "Good night, BB," which I thought was bye-bye, so I'd say "Haha, good night, BB," back to him. Then he'd start sending me hearts, like the triangular bracket number 3, and I thought we were guys being guys, so I'd jokingly message that heart back to him. Eventually, he started calling me his girlfriend when he was defending me, and I realized he full-on thought I was a woman the entire time. I messaged him after that game and was like, "Dude, I'm a guy." And he went on a rampage. He started cussing me out, and by the end of it, the reason why he thought I was female was because of my username and because I used proper grammar and spelling. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. He claimed to be a US Marine, yet had an extravagant amount of free time to play Mamorpagas. Someone here on Reddit offered to run his name through the USMC database. Well, someone by his name did, but they'd been discharged in 1958 or something, whereas this guy claimed to be 21. Good old stolen valor. Similar thing happened to a guild I was in. The leader was supposedly a Canadian soldier with UN forces fighting warlords in Africa. It went so far that he got chemical burns in his lungs and sounded like heck on voice chat. Turns out it was all bullcrap. He'd used a voice changer to sound raspy. It was so weird and the guild disbanded over it. I was probably 19, very bad with women, and very into role-playing on things called MUXs or MUXs. I think it was a very roleplay-centric all-text MMO. I met a girl on one of these MUXs. She was a senior in high school. I'd just graduated, and we started hanging out online, which went to "let's call and talk about the plots we're running in," which became "I love you" a couple of weeks later. There was a lot of fun. I scanned my junk, she scanned hers, we sent it to each other. We'd sit on the phone and laugh about stuff until like 3 a.m. or whenever her dad would come in and tell her to hang up. She was the first girl I ever did the deed with on the phone. I still get a weird tingle when I see girls in videos using the bathtub to have fun. This was all before camera phones, so all I had to go on was my imagination. Well, calls started slowing down, then the letters stopped getting responded to. Eventually, she just stopped talking to me altogether. About then, I started putting the pieces together, how her pictures were always like some girl in a crowd or some schoolgirl's photos, and how all my mail came back returned to sender until she gave me a new, completely different address. The signs were all there, I was just willfully ignoring them. I think there was probably some feelings on her end. My theory is that she was a lot younger than she was claiming, and I was talking a lot of nonsense about her moving to my state so we could be together. I think she got scared or her parents found out she was talking to an older guy and she cut contact. The romance seemed two-directional. I liked making her laugh and making silly plans with her. She genuinely seemed to enjoy my humor and company. But then again, she was telling me she was 17, and how hard is it not to laugh at 17 sometimes? So, if your name is Rashni, or if you pretended to be a girl named Rashni in like 2000s, no hard feelings. Thanks for laying the groundwork and making my current relationship, which has a temporary long-distance aspect, a lot easier. And whenever I think about our imaginary son, Spaghetti Bucket, I smile and I wish you well. I had a friend back in high school who was catfished. Told us this story a week after it happened at a graduation party. He had been chatting with this girl from Florida for 3 years. Decided to finally go and visit her for a week after our high school graduation. So he took a plane down and she was going to pick him up at the airport. He arrives and instead is greeted by her mother, who says her daughter is waiting for him back at the house. So he gets his bags and heads for the car with her. He notices this guy sitting in the back seat around his age. Funny that he didn't remember anything about her having a brother. He starts getting a little weirded out at this point. They finally arrive at the house. No girl in sight. He gets angry and has the mother spill the beans. Turns out this lady was using her niece's pictures to talk with him. How he didn't realize sooner, I don't know. Maybe they never talked on the phone, or maybe her voice sounded young. Anyways, he immediately left this lady and her son and spent the night at a hotel and had his parents pay for a plane ticket back home the next day. Okay, so for a moment I thought it was going to be the son in the back seat who was the catfish, and was wondering if he'd somehow got his mum in on the fishing, or if he'd hired someone to play his parent until they were back home. My god, story 3 in our video has me just thinking about how dangerous these situations can be, so in a way I was kind of relieved it was just a love-starved older gal. I was talking to this girl, initially from Twitter, who was easily a 9 out of 10, one of the hottest girls I've ever seen. That was my first clue because the odds of her instantly going for an average guy like myself, who she'd never met, were very slim, especially as she had a fair few followers showing interest. Eventually, there were loads of inconsistencies in the stuff she told me about herself. She was way too clingy for someone who I'd never met. I just put that down to me being different, like not reciprocating any feelings or never telling her how hot she was and stuff like that. She wanted to meet me, but I decided against it after speaking to a friend who knew her in real life, and he told me she had a long-term boyfriend, despite her not having much experience with guys, according to her. I then started hearing rumors that she had 2 accounts on Facebook, and one of them, the one that added me, could be a fake or decoy. After that, I figured it was too much of a hassle to keep up with her. There were so many signs to avoid her, so I just cut off all contact. Funnily enough, I read a blog post a few years later from the real girl who said that this girl had been impersonating her for the past 10 years. She had been leading guys on and went really far with her charade up to the point where she seemed mentally unstable. So bullet dodged, I guess. What I should clarify is that this girl was not just using someone else's pictures, she was using the girl's life. She'd pretended to be the exact same girl in the picture and used her first name, her friends' names, her life story, everything. So in essence, anyone would think they were talking to the real girl and could tell the real girl everything about her, even though they didn't actually know her. She made fake Facebooks of loads of her friends and used to post pictures, taking them off the real girl's Facebook, and tag the fake profiles of these friends in, leaving comments. Arguably, this was true identity fraud more than catfishing, but the blog post stated that the catfish apologized and acknowledged she was crazy. She just didn't know how to stop and only did it because she enjoyed the fake life more than her own. And she never did stop until that blog post came out. I met someone on OkCupid. He was moving from New York City to my city and said he was a surgeon. That was my first red flag. I wondered why a successful surgeon was on a free dating site. We chatted for 2 weeks, but he didn't want to talk on the phone. Red flag number 2. At this point, I assumed he was fake. He deleted his profile, saying he couldn't wait to meet me in 3 weeks when he was scheduled to fly in for a weekend to find a condo. I reverse searched his picture and found another profile, same story, but it said he was moving to Phoenix. Red flag number 3. At this point, I know he's fake, but now I'm having fun making him think I'm totally hooked. He gave me bad med advice when I sprained my ankle, then told me he had a thing for feet, and he'd be making sure I'd get daily pedicures when I quit my job and moved in with him. The weekend he was supposed to fly in, his current almost former boss, quote, died, and he couldn't make it. I sent him screenshots of his other profile and told him I knew all along and I'd just been messing with him. Good times. I talked to this guy, Sean, for months, probably close to a year. Then, poof, gone. It sucked, but oh well. 6 months later, started talking to another guy with the same unusual middle name. He turned out to be Sean's ex-boyfriend, and about 80% of the stuff I knew about Sean was actually about him. He broke up with Sean 6 months before and took his phone back, and that's why he disappeared. In short, I met the real-life inspiration for the persona I was catfished with. Catfish here. I really like turkey liver, and the next thing I know, someone's yanking me out of the water and frying me with some okra and hush puppies. Okay, so I actually had this happen to me recently. I was using a dating app and started talking to this girl. She had 5 photos on there, 2 of her and 3 group photos. Nothing surprising for a girl on a dating site. We agreed to grab coffee, and I arrived early and sat outside, and this girl walks up to me and says hello. She introduced herself as the girl I was meeting, but didn't look anything like her. Something was familiar about her, but I couldn't go and take out my phone to check, so I went ahead with the date. We ordered coffee, and I thought about making a break for it right there when she went and put sugar in it, but decided to stay. Start talking, and we pick up the conversation we were having online, but after about half a cup, I'd had enough, and it wasn't going anywhere, so I made up some BS excuse and I left. Back in the car, I opened up my phone to look at her profile again and figured out why she looked familiar. She was in the photos, she was one of the girls in the group, but she was using her friend as the main photo. Very weird. The sad part was that she wasn't terrible looking, just kind of boring, and she wasn't as good looking as her friend. I can't fathom the very sad lack of self-confidence of what was going on there. Well, most of these stories have been confusing to me, some have been outright infuriating, but this one is just sad. Here's hoping she found whatever community or activity would help her break out of her shell. When she showed up and had a male organ, 8 out of 10 would try again. My best friend's father found out when my friend told him. He was in love, but her photos were too perfect, so my friend got some proof together and broke the news to him. He took it well. I was catfished on a dating site, she was way too hot to be talking to me, and sure enough, she was a model in a relationship. Bummer. A few years back, it wasn't anything serious, just this girl sending me pictures when I was 12 or 13, and I sent some back. I logged into my old email when I was around 16, and I looked up the email she had used and found out it was this older man who posted up his email asking for girls. He sent me another girl's pictures. Piece of crap. I dated this woman for a few months who claimed she was a doctor. I thought, cool, and just went with it. I caught on by her continually talking about how she was going to buy a car. She'd claimed she'd sold her car before moving. She also claimed she was going to buy me random things, claimed she was going to take me to Vegas, went on and on like this and never delivered on anything. I had suspicions for a while, but what finally provided evidence was looking her up in medical registries. She wasn't listed anywhere. I confronted her and she kept trying to make lame excuses for anything I asked about. Haven't talked to her since. What was the best gotcha moment that you've seen go down in court? A lady got into a minor fender bender with a truck in a casino parking lot. She backed out of a spot into him. My guy said she had parked and went inside the casino for a few hours. At her deposition, she testified that she was so hurt that she went right home and to a hospital. I asked if she was a frequent visitor of the casino and if she had a rewards card. She was happy to tell me that she did, and she had gold status, and showed me the card. I subpoenaed her rewards card records, and it showed she was playing slots for hours after the accident. My client's house burned down from an explosion in the fuel oil tank used to heat the house. It was clearly the oil maintenance company's fault, but his homeowner's insurance, from a very reputable company, still refused to pay out, citing a ridiculous technicality in his policy. Essentially, the policy covered damage caused by the oil heater, but they claimed that it was the storage tank that exploded and wasn't part of what was covered. So they deny his claim, which was about $1.2 million, and then I get involved. During a deposition with the claims adjuster, I ask how she came to the conclusion that the storage tank was not a part, or at least not connected to the heater. She states that she relied on her expert witness, who was an engineer. Little did she know I'd already checked this person's background. He had zero engineering experience or education. As most of you might know, you don't get attorney's fees in most cases. However, when an insurance company denies your claim in bad faith, now you do. Her little admission cost the company about $500,000 in fees, on top of the original claim for $1.2 million. Plaintiff had an X-ray of an allegedly broken arm. It seemed off to me and the dates didn't make sense. I was in-house at an academic medical center. I looked at the case more closely and discovered that the plaintiff was an X-ray tech at another hospital. After that, it was all over. I was trying to get a restraining order for a woman in DV court from her son's father. We were presenting testimony and she detailed a story where he grabbed her arm and slammed it on the tub, breaking her wrist. On cross, I asked the accused if he ever broke my client's wrist on purpose. His response, "Frick yeah, I did. She was 9 months pregnant and about to do smack and wouldn't stop. I tried to grab her arm to get the pipe and protect my unborn son." Frick me. She left that detail out in her conversations with me. Well, that's a moral conundrum that could be put in a philosophy course. Actually, no, just call the cops on your wife. Sucky situation anyway, though, all told. I had a former client file for bankruptcy, and in connection with that case, brought an action against his landlord for violating the automatic stay. In order to prove the damages, he wanted to show he paid my firm for legal fees in connection with the landlord's pursuit of rent in violation of the stay. So this former client's bankruptcy lawyer serves me a subpoena to show up at the bankruptcy hearing. He didn't ask me any questions prior, but just gave me the gist of what the objective was. In this case, to verify with the court the time I spent and the cost to his client. The bankruptcy attorney called his client, my former client, to the stand first. He asked him questions related to his hiring my firm to do this and that as it related to his landlord. Apparently, that's not enough. The bankruptcy attorney wants me to verify these facts as well. I get put on the stand and I was asked to verify the invoice. I first object to the question as a precaution, since it may be a violation of attorney-client privilege to answer the question, and to cover me for any claim by the bar or my former client. As predicted, the judge overrules and orders me to answer. I review the invoice and answer, "No, this is not my invoice." His attorney says, "I don't understand. This is your firm's logo and information, right?" "Yes." "And you provided these legal services, right?" "No." A very confused attorney slowly started to put together, after a couple more follow-up questions, that this idiot client of ours had manufactured my invoice to prove his damages. Needless to say, I could have given his new attorney the heads up, but I wasn't going to help someone who'd committed perjury to the court using my name. I'd represented him in a completely different matter, and this guy was trying to make some extra cash through his bankruptcy hearing. 2 lessons. Tell your attorneys everything, and as an attorney, make sure your client feels comfortable telling you everything. Cross-examining a custom home builder who had a lump sum contract, set price as opposed to cost plus, which means cost of the materials plus the builder's fee, with the homeowner. Claimed he put 20% more labor and materials into building the home than the contract had provided for, and he was suing for those excess costs. I was asking him about an email with my client negotiating the price of the construction, and he volunteers that he knew he couldn't build it for that price. My head snaps up. Supervising partner's head snaps up, and the opposing counsel goes pale. Dialogue was something like, "You quoted this price?" And the builder said, "Yes." "And you knew you couldn't build it for that price?" The builder said, "Yes." "You knew the homeowner was relying on that quote?" "Yes." "You knew the homeowner wouldn't have signed the contract without that representation?" "Yes." "And you told homeowner's lender that you could do it for this amount?" "Yes." "And the bank relied on that price and wouldn't have given loan if they knew it was wrong?" "Yes." This is textbook fraudulent inducement, and he had no idea. Builder got poured out in the arbitration award and slapped the builder with a sizable punitive damages on top of it. 5 minutes of testimony sunk his case because he volunteered information without being prompted. The plaintiff alleged he was so injured in an auto accident that he couldn't work or do any regular activities or pick up his young kids. He then posted on his public Facebook profile him doing the ice bucket challenge. If you're not familiar, he basically lifted a huge cooler filled with ice water over his head. His attorney had no idea that he'd posted it. "I once heard about a man who got a doctor to do him a report for his compo claim. Can't bend, can't lift, can't run, etc. Problem was he had a paternity suit ongoing at the same time. Got the same doctor to write a report for that case. No restrictions on mobility, can pick up kid, play with him, etc. As you can guess, he and the doctor got caught. Recent and pretty good, I represented a guy whose car died in the middle of the freeway at 4 a.m. He put his hazard lights on and called 911 for help. At the same time, an LAPD cop, heading to work around the same time in a police unmarked car, was driving around 87 to 92 miles per hour. Per our deconstructionist, he didn't see our guy and strikes him, causing a major 6-car collision, including overturning an 18-wheeler truck. The police arrive and take photos. The LAPD officer claimed our guy didn't have his hazard lights on, and he was only driving 60 miles per hour. He was trying to put some of the fault on our guy. At the deposition of the investigating officer, she doesn't remember if our guy's hazard lights were on or not. The attorney brings him photos of the scene. One of the photos showed my guy's hazard lights on. We were dismissed shortly thereafter. Not so much a gotcha as it is the defendant giving themselves up. When I worked for insurance defense, I handled a fraud case where a man reported his Rolex as being stolen. He was so adamant that he was at a hotel and it was stolen. He's shown no proof of being in a hotel, so it's flagged. We go through the whole process and finally reached depositions. He gets sworn in and eventually left out that he wasn't at a hotel, but rather with his mistress and had left it at her house. His wife noticed he didn't have it on, so he immediately claims it was stolen. Yeah, right. This man decided to hire an attorney and go through this whole circus just so his wife wouldn't find out about his affair. Needless to say, the claim was denied. I mean, the fellow in question is a gigantic sack of crap, but I guess if he wants to save what's left of his marriage, that's clearly failing by his own fault, go ahead. Lying always works, right? When I was in the military, I was accused of something I didn't do, and I had to go to court over it. And during court, the prosecutor started to detail this investigation and how they'd staked my apartment out for months. They entered into evidence a picture of my apartment, and when they put it up, I looked shocked at my lawyer because it wasn't a picture of my place. It was my ex-wife's apartment, a place I'd never lived, never spent a single night there. I lived in a house, she lived in an apartment. And when my lawyer asked if she objected to the picture being entered into evidence, she replied, "I don't mind them entering it into evidence as long as they change the listing of it." And when one of the members of the panel, no judge, 3 members board, asked what was wrong with the listing, she looked at him and said, "That's not his apartment." On top of this, the witness they used against me described going to my house on the night in question, and she named the subdivision where she had visited me, except that wasn't where I lived either. Also wasn't where the picture they had was either. The case was dismissed and I was told they requested the witness to return to answer questions about perjury. I lived with a guy when we were in our early 20s. He worked for one of those crappy furniture rental places where people without money get furniture. Much of his job was repossessing furniture, and in his spare time he was a skateboarder. He severely hurt his back on the job and they were contesting paying his bills and settling. At one of his mediation dates, they revealed they'd hired a private investigator to follow him. They showed him pictures of himself at a skate park skating when he was supposed to be home recovering. They asked him to verify it was him. He said no. These doofuses had somehow missed that he had a twin brother who also skated. They eventually settled for what I thought was a very low $70,000. He had back pain for years that caused him to gain weight and suffer. In his 30s, he finally had back surgery and he regretted not doing it 10 years earlier. He said it completely alleviated the pain. I had a client accused of leading the cops on a high-speed chase. The cop on the stand estimated he was going 90 miles per hour but never actually clocked him. Then the cop identified where the chase started with me and where it ended. It lasted about 2 miles. Then we went through his log of when it started and when it ended. About 3.5 minutes. Once you walk through the math on that, the average speed of this chase was 35 miles per hour. The client got acquitted really quickly after that. A friend of mine got pulled over once. I was in the car with him. When the cop approached us, he said, "Do you know how fast you were going?" I had to go 70 to catch up. My only thought was, how does that matter? It's not like it'd catch up by matching our speed. I'm still confused by that interaction. It sounds like police officers don't know what relative velocity is. The first case I ever did, opposing counsel misplaced the copy of my client's driver's license. Rather than admitting his mistake and asking me to resend it, he filed a motion to compel, claiming we never sent it. Well, I was able to provide proof that we'd sent it to him like 8 months ago, so the judge was rather displeased with his antics. The judge was rather displeased with his antics? Not a lawyer, but this tends to be my impression with judges who catch people doing shady stuff. I remember once, during undergrad, being an intern with a probation office and the case ahead of our revocation hearing had a guy pleading guilty. During his rambling and disjointed allocation, the judge frowned. "So why are you pleading guilty exactly?" And the guy replied, "My lawyer told me to." The judge was most displeased when he questioned the guy further and found out the guy had no concept of what he was doing or what the potential sentencing could be. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Represented a DUI client who swore up and down to me that he hadn't been drinking or doing any substances. A newbie officer who had his field training officer with him in the car. The rookie pulls the client over for a tag violation, walks back to the car with the body camera still on, and the training officer, FTO, says to him, "Get him out for a DUI," and the rookie says, "But he's not intoxicated." To which the reply was, "Do it anyway." The body cam clicks off, turns on 7 minutes later when they're doing field sobriety exercises on my client. The client sat in custody for 3 weeks until I finally got the tape from the prosecutor and presented it to the judge. The "oh crap" looks from the prosecutor and field training officer when the judge saw the tape, I'll treasure those. The judge wrote the police chief a letter saying the field training officer was dead to him and he'd deny every search warrant he tried to bring thereafter for being a liar. The client is hopefully still on track with his civil attorney in a lawsuit. I was suing a landlord who failed to make serious repairs in order to force the tenant out. The hard part is proving bad intent instead of mere idiocy so you get higher damages. Code enforcement was involved, so I request those records. The landlord left a voicemail to the enforcement department saying to hold off on the fines. They'll make the repairs as soon as the tenant is forced out. That was an easy case. Some crap like this happened to my dad. The landlord refused to make repairs, the washer was busted, garbage disposal was leaking, and forced floorboards to warp. My dad moved and wanted his deposit. They wouldn't give it to him. He took them to court. He took pictures before he left and kept all texts from them. They walked themselves into a corner with everything they said. My dad was prepared for every claim. Eventually, the judge told my dad he could fight it until the end and get his whole deposit, or the landlord could give most of it now and it would be over. He took the deal because he didn't have time for court and the look of anger and defeat on the landlord's face was too satisfying. I had a client whose $60,000 car was ruined by a shop that put in the wrong oil. We couldn't prove it at first. The engine blew up and oil leaked out and evidence was lost. I subpoenaed their bank records. I figured out they brought their oil from Costco. Called Costco and got their prices list for the last 2 years. I worked out the amounts they were spending, did some backhand math, and showed, based on the values, it was impossible they ever bought the correct oil. They settled in full immediately. This is just satisfying. Not a massive slip-up on the defendant's behalf like a lot of these others, just a good bit of clever sleuthing and voila, the magician has turned a "this didn't happen" into a "we admit everything." Chef's kiss. Worked as a paralegal and investigator, working a trade secrets case involving the manufacturer of dental wheels used to grind teeth. Long story, but go with it. Company A was a small family-owned manufacturer, but made the best product on the market from a small factory in the middle of nowhere. Sold massive amounts of product because of quality. Its location was remote enough and the owner paid employees so well the employees stayed there. Forever. All of them had worked there for more than 30 years. When the founder of the company died, it was sold to International Company B because the kids and grandkids had no interest in the company. Company B then closed the old factory and tried to use Company A's formula at their facilities. Company B couldn't make the formula work. Now, enter Company C, another international company who lost the bid on buying Company A. When Company C heard about the problems Company B was having, they brought the old factory facilities and then rehired the old staff to restart production. All the employees of old Company A were delighted to have their good-paying jobs back and went straight to work, producing the better quality items once again, and Company C's product worked. Company B sues Company C for trade secrets violation. When you buy a company, you buy their trade secrets, and this company had a bunch. The product was just one part, but the most profitable part of their operation. Thus, Company C, because of their action, was accused of violating the laws governing trade secrets. Company B even managed to get a temporary restraining order against Company C in federal court, and Company C had to stop manufacturing at the old plant they now owned. This is when I enter the picture. Our firm represented Company C, and I was assigned to interview all of the employees. I was in the living room of this delightful older lady in her late 50s that offered me snacks and asked me if I was married and wanted to set me up with her granddaughter, you name it. Best and funniest interview ever. Then she drops the bomb. I asked her how she knew how to make the product. All my previous interviews said so, and so taught them. She said, "From the directions on the wall." Total moment of silence. Directions on the wall? "Yes," she said. "No one ever looks at them, but there's a board on the wall with the directions." I called the janitor of the facility from her phone, this is before cell phones, and had him meet me there. He unlocks the place and covered in probably 40 years of dust, making it just part of the background, is a board with the entire process on it. Thus, when Company B sold the factory, which was eventually purchased by Company C, Company B accidentally sold the trade secrets to Company C because they abandoned it on the wall. I did serious evidence sourcing on this. My best pictures were of this 65 or older former janitor knocking the dust off the pages, taking the entire board off the wall, putting it in a paper bag and sealing it so I never touched it. Every picture he smiled for the camera. His "frick you" expression was priceless in every picture. They were so fricking funny. The judge in federal court was laughing his butt off when he heard the details of what I found to reverse the restraining order. When he opened the bag, he laughed even more. The factory reopened immediately. Company B and C settled by agreeing that they both got to use the trade secret, but couldn't sell it to anyone else. What they really figured out was those little old ladies had slightly changed the formula over the years and made them slightly better over time. Even the formula on the wall didn't work as well as those little ladies did. My brother is an attorney. He had a case where the guy said he was permanently disabled from a work accident. At a deposition, my brother overheard the guy talking about getting his house remodeled. He was already spending the money he thought he was getting. My brother drove by the house to see how much work was being done and saw the guy carrying bundles of roofing shingles up a ladder to the roof. This was before smartphones, so he drove to a Best Buy and brought a video camera, went back and recorded the guy. He had copies made and sent it to the other attorney. The guy dropped the suit and went back to work the following Monday. My brother's client didn't want to pay for the video camera. It saved them thousands of dollars. They eventually paid, but he still gets a little teed off when he talks about it. I'm amazed the initial guy's company even took him back after he tried to pull that stunt. Certainly wouldn't have helped his chances at future claims. Sucks to suck, although clearly his bosses sucked a bit too. Legal videographer. This gentleman was claiming injuries and seeking damages against his employer after a fall at work. He claimed he couldn't raise his right arm above his shoulder because of the fall. First deposition comes along, and I'm hired by defendant's attorney to videotape deposition of the plaintiff. Anyone know the first thing a court reporter asks you to do in a deposition? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. The plaintiff raises his right arm above his shoulder with ease and no sign of discomfort. It doesn't occur to him what he's done. Both attorneys were looking down at their notes when this happened, and neither of them caught it. The plaintiff himself didn't catch it. The court reporter looked at him and then looked at me, and her eyes went wide with realization at what had just happened. 4 hours of depositions proceed where the plaintiff is instructed, multiple times, to show his range of motion and proceeds to pretend like he can't raise his arm above the shoulder level, which he did at the very beginning of this deposition. Deposition ends, plaintiff's counsel leaves, I call defense, the hiring party, counsels over, and show them the first 2 minutes of the tape. The counsel excitedly whispers to me, "Case closed. You've just saved us tens of thousands of dollars." I got a $5,000 bonus, and the plaintiff's case was dismissed with prejudice. This is so petty. I've had much bigger moments, but because of the character of the other side, this will always be my favorite. Doing a boundary dispute, a squabble over what was essentially a few inches of land. The other side was a lawyer and an absolute butt. He was acting for himself. The whole, a lawyer who acts for himself has a fool for a client thing was bang on for him, but he was a deeply unpleasant guy, a bully who thought that he was the smartest guy in the room. Part of his case hinged on wheelie bins and how prior to the boundary having been moved, there wasn't space to store a full-sized bin beside the house. The fact that you now could meant clearly the boundary must have moved. That was the extent of his evidence. It was really thin stuff. During the actual trial, he pulled a fast one by suddenly producing an old aerial photo, ostensibly to show the boundary at the front of the property had also moved. A fast one because you have to disclose stuff like that in advance, you can't just sit on something relevant and then suddenly whip it out at a trial with a flourish. While he was making his submissions that it should be admissible, I looked more closely at it, away from the bit of the boundary he said it was relevant to, and realized that it very clearly showed a wheelie bin in exactly the spot his case said there couldn't be one. Told the judge we were happy for the photo to be admitted after all, and got the other side to confirm the date it was taken, and then pointed out he'd just completely messed up his own case. That photo did him for nearly $50,000 in adverse costs. Couldn't happen to a more deserving chap. My client was a woman working at a meatpacking plant. Her glove, they'd only give her the loose kind because they were cheaper, got caught in the machine and she lost her arm. We sued the owners of the plant for the glove issue. We also sued the machine manufacturer for failing to include the required guard. Then we sued the distributor for being in the chain of the sale, but didn't really think they played that much of a role. The manufacturer swore that they included a handguard and said the plant owner must have used a grinder to take it off. During a deposition of the guy that owned the distributing company, he shows up with the sale documents he was supposed to have turned over weeks before. Turns out there was a note in the small print at the bottom he didn't know about that said the sale was without the handguard, which is against the law. I pointed it out and we ended up settling that afternoon with the distributor. The woman got all her medical bills paid, got money for a prosthetic, and got a bunch of pain and suffering damages. How do cops tell the guilty people apart from the ones who are just nervous? I knew a police helicopter pilot and I asked a similar question when searching for suspects. He said that the bad guys were the ones not looking up at the helicopter. Innocent people point, look, and stare. I thought it was funny, but true to a point. I was taking the bins out one dark night and there was a police helicopter nearby. All of a sudden, they lit me up with the spotlight. I was like a deer in the headlights, and after a second or two, slowly waved at them, and then after a few more seconds, the spotlight moved on elsewhere. It was so awkward, they must have been peeing themselves laughing. Pulled over for being lost in the wrong neighborhood. Was relieved as I didn't have GPS at the time and was horribly lost. I'd been hoping that the cop who'd been tailing me for the last mile would pull me over to get directions. They wanted to know why a white boy like me was in a neighborhood like this. I explained that I'm lost. Doesn't believe me. Says I'm here for substances. My whole attitude changed because I was suddenly nervous. Why would he think that? And realizing that this could go badly. He says only guilty people act nervous. He ends up calling a K9 unit to search my car. The other cop is really cool. We chat and he apologized for the first cop being a jerk. After search, he gives me directions on how to get to my destination. Good cop, bad cop is real. I got pulled over for speeding on Canada Day, on my way up to Ottawa from Toronto. Did the usual routine of pulling over somewhere safe, taking the registration out and putting both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. The cop approaches and I ask if it's okay for me to reach over and turn down the music, which I forgot to do. He starts laughing and says okay. He tells me to put my hands down since I'm making him nervous. I'm like, you're making me nervous. Back in Toronto, I don't take chances, and the cops are usually appreciative. But they've never told me to relax. It's best to err on the side of caution with Toronto police. But out of the city, cops are usually pretty laid back. We had a good old Canadian laugh, wished each other a happy Canada Day, and then he gave me a ticket for 115 in a 100. The funny thing is, I'm an off-duty cop, and around a uniformed officer I don't know, different department or area, I get nervous. Hell, my heart sometimes skips a beat when I see one of our own cars driving down the road, even though it might be the exact same vehicle I was assigned to just a few hours ago. My point is, I think pretty much everyone gets nervous around cops. Most people will avoid you and not make eye contact. But what really stands out for me are the adults that will periodically look at you, or you feel them staring at you like they're trying to ID your face. I've had to arrest a lot of people over the years, and many of them are back out on the streets. Perhaps as a cop, he's aware of how poorly things can go. I don't think literally everyone gets nervous around cops. The narrator has never had that healthy fear. Maybe one day when I'm wrongfully victimized, that will change. UK police officer here. There's no single factor, but there's a few things I'd look out for. Police aware is an expression we use. Like the last guy said, most people feel guilty and try to act normal around the police, which normally means pretending we're not there. You can begin to concentrate on eating that sandwich to an almost comic extent while sneaking the odd look to see what the copper's doing. Then you have the people who stop what they're doing and watch you intensely to see if you're coming for them. These are the people who are police aware. Of course, sometimes they're just tourists hoping to take a sneaky photo of a British copper. Mostly it's people whose appearance or manner doesn't fit in. For example, if you go to a busy taxi rank at a rush hour and then just casually mooch about rather than queuing or leaving, then that's an odd thing to do. If you walk into an expensive shop wearing tatty clothes and with ingrained dirt on your hands, then that's an odd thing to do. If you walk into a bar, order a drink, then leave it on the counter, then that's odd as well. And probably means you're either passing counterfeit money or pickpocketing. None of these things is illegal, but they're all things that are not entirely normal and would attract the eyes of an observant police officer. Don't misinterpret these examples as looking scruffy. That's not what I mean at all. It's about not fitting in because of your context, not just a sudden bout of, I'm normal, from someone who clearly has a reason to be where they are. Visible signs of substance use. Sometimes in the UK you'll hear the term smack diet, but the same would be true for crystal in the US. You can spot addicts from a mile away, because they have the same look and behaviors. Without wishing to tar all addicts with the same brush, hard substance addiction and acquisitive crime often go hand in hand. So when I see someone who's clearly an addict, I'm immediately interested in them. Lastly, there's intelligence. A lot of what we do is guided by specific knowledge about an area. In some areas, I'll be looking out for teenage kids hanging around bike racks. In others, I'll be looking out for substance addicts meeting dealers. In others, I'll still be looking for bag thieves amongst drinkers. Anyone who matches the sort of person who I'm on the lookout for, who also gets jumpy, is going to pique my interest. But normal people, less so. Sorry it's such a rambling answer, the truth is there are many factors and it just depends. A good friend of mine works as a lawyer for one of the bigger insurer companies in defense. A good percentage of accidents happen because people freak out about the mere presence of the cop and don't focus on the actual driving. Like literally during a deposition, I didn't see them pull out, there was a cop on the same road. In medicine, we have a similar phenomenon called white coat hypertension. Being in the mere presence of a doctor raises patients' blood pressure. So a patient may have a normal blood pressure, but every time they step into the office to get it checked, it goes up. Going to the doctor can be bad for your health sometimes. I'm one of these jumpy people. I've been pulled over and screamed at, "Why are you so nervous? What are you hiding?" And another time, the cop was very nice and just said, "Relax, it's just a ticket. Are you okay? Do you want to catch your breath? It's not a big deal. Take a couple of deep breaths, buddy." Super friendly and helps me relax. I get anxiety in those situations without any real cause. I just get really nervous. It's crazy how differently cops can handle the situation in the exact same circumstances. Just one was nicer, or trained better. I've only had one bad instance with a cop who was convinced I was up to no good. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He asked me why I took a specific exit before my destination, and I mentioned I needed gas. He said, "Well, you've got an answer for everything, don't you?" Yes, sir, it's not that difficult when it's the truth. He ended up having me wait outside the car for half an hour while he went over it with a canine unit after I refused to let him search. I didn't want to have to reorganize everything after he rummaged through it. I had nothing to hide. Then when the dog found nothing, he searched the car anyway because I seemed nervous because I was sweating, after standing in the Texas sun in August for 30 minutes. I filed a complaint and was pretty much told, "Too bad, our officers are risking our lives for you every day, and people shouldn't be questioning their authority." Cop here. Assuming this is on a traffic stop, for the most part, if you're acting jumpy, I try to figure out why and remove that stress. If I can't figure it out on my own, I'll simply ask. Common answers are, I don't like cops, I don't want a ticket, and so on. My reasoning for this is if you're relaxed and I ask if there are any weapons in the car and your stress indicators skyrocket when you say no, something's wrong. If you're already stressed, I won't be able to see that reaction. As others have stated, it's not 100%, some people are just nervous Nellies. I try to calm people down for their sanity and my safety, but it doesn't always work. I have anxiety. Every time a copper pulls me over, I look guilty. But really, I'm scared of unwarranted police violence and nervous about how much money today's ticket will cost me. Police always notice and they always say that makes me suspicious, so they have reason to ask to search me and my possessions. I feel like I can't be the only innocent person in the world who gets the jumps around police, but they always act like I'm the first person they've ever encountered who acts guilty when I haven't actually done anything. Every time I get pulled over, as soon as my tag is run through the system, the police get on their bullhorn and tell me to get out and lay on the ground. Not because I'm black, because I'm a 2-time convicted felon, been crime-free for 6 years. But I always find it amusing, and after all the foolishness, I always have a laugh with them. Duval, Florida, by the way. Well, your attitude to it is bafflingly positive. I can't imagine many people would react that positively to what you make sound like a semi-regular public spectacle of yourself. Police instructor here. You look for what is out of place or context. Everyone is looking at an event or certain direction, and that one person is staring at you or in the complete opposite direction. That's the oddball. People draw attention to themselves by behavior that is different from the environment, or expected of the environment they're in. It's how they identified the Boston bombers. Everyone was looking in the direction of the explosion, but the brothers were staring in the opposite direction. Suspicious behavior. This technique can be applied to clothing as well. If it's summer and you see people wearing heavy jackets, there's something odd. Somebody keeps tapping the waistline and there's no reason for him to do that, like something falling off it, and there's something tucked into their waistline, like substances or weapons. Now, not saying this gives you an excuse to go up and start frisking people, however, it definitely lets you narrow down the focus of your attention for what is out of place. Cops once woke me up at 3 a.m. in the morning because my neighbor saw flashlights in the woods next to my house. Then they started questioning me, asking why I seemed so nervous, and if I wasn't doing anything, why were there footprints in the snow in front of my fricking front door? I was a 19-year-old living on my own in a small town, so small it didn't have a population. I just remember being absolutely flabbergasted at why they'd want to know why someone might be nervous from getting a visit from the cops in the middle of the night, and why they thought footprints in a heavily traveled area was suspicious. I basically told them some variation of that and then told them they were welcome to look around outside if they wanted before they left. This was during deer hunting season in Wisconsin, so the only thing I could think of is that maybe they thought there was some poaching going on. Still, it showed a remarkable detachment from reality that they couldn't understand why I was so nervous to begin with. I had a similar incident. Dead asleep, woken up by police pounding on the door. This is before cell phones, so naturally, my now ex-husband and I woke up and ran downstairs. Cue the police shining a light in our faces, and the first thing they said was, "Oh, let me guess, you just woke up. How convenient." So the ex and I were like, yeah, we did. What's going on? The cop says our car was involved in a hit and run of several cars. A friend of ours was staying over a few nights. We motioned behind us to the couch where he was sleeping to the cops, who come in. Dude is in his shoes, and yet he's sweating. So, yeah, thanks for assuming, dudes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Actual police officer here. There really is no magic answer. There's a ton of overlap between both groups, and anyone who says they can consistently spot the difference is lying to you. I'd rather judge the situation based on the objective facts rather than my gut feeling. Not long after I got my license, I was driving around and at a stoplight there was a cop behind me. I hadn't done anything wrong. Cops at that point didn't freak me out yet, and I even knew a kid in school who was planning to become one. The lights turn green, and I go. I notice behind me everyone is behind the cop on all lanes. It weirded me out. Usually, there are cars passing me or next to me. People were giving the cop a nice wide berth, or at least not wanting to drive ahead of it. It made me feel paranoid and I checked my speed. I was actually going slower than the speed limit. After I figured out everyone was just being paranoid, I sped up to the speed limit, and that was that. The cop was driving slower than the speed limit, and I drove off, leaving them all behind. I feel like the cop probably thought it was hilarious that his presence was slowing down traffic, because it wasn't like he was trying to control it, his lights weren't on. Since then, I've had plenty of speeding tickets. Plenty. But not on that day. Cops freak me out now too. Every time I see one, I go, oh crap, speed limit? I'm okay. Car functioning right? Yes. Substances in the car? Wait, no, don't do substances. It's a tense situation. Not a cop, but having worked in a pawn shop, I'll say they talk way too much. When the customer was trying to pull something on us, most would talk a lot about nothing, keep up a constant stream of chatter. Of course, this is in no way a 100% indicator, but it was one sign we looked for. Liars will usually offer additional explanations and excuses for something even when you don't ask, mostly because they assume you'll doubt what they'll say and feel the need to back up their claims. Just imagine that a friend is late and he says, "Oh, sorry, I forgot," and move on. That's probably true because he didn't even consider for a moment you might doubt that. That same friend shows up late but then starts explaining in detail why they're late and add more and more details to that story even though you didn't ask. They might be making crap up and trying to present a more finite, flawless story. And of course, this only applies to bad liars. Duh, of course. Tips for spotting obvious liars only apply to people who didn't perfect the art. Not a cop, but I'm a Florida native and am usually dressed in shorts and a t-shirt. I was in a flyover state for a concert and was supposed to pick someone up about 4 hours away in the morning. Instead of getting a hotel for 5 hours, I decided to drive to my destination and sleep in the back of the rental car. Usually when I do this, I roll the windows down and sleep with the car off, but it was in the mid-30s this night. I pull into the vacant parking lot next to a vacant building outside of town. Turns out I was still in city limits. I tried to turn the lights off but wasn't able to. This eventually attracted the attention of the local law enforcement. I woke to a flashlight banging on my window. They, all 9 of them, wanted me out of the car while they tried to figure out what was going on. Being as it was cold, I started to shake. I shared how I thought it was amusing that I was shaking and that it would likely raise suspicion. The cop that was babysitting me at that moment said, "No, it's cold out." She then let me get into the car and started again. 9 out of 10 would recommend. I got pulled over for a DUI stop at 2:30 in the morning in the middle of March. I was just leaving work, so I didn't really have a proper attire to be standing outside for long periods of time. I'd not been drinking and showed no evidence of it at all. I got pulled over for swerving when I went to reach for my water bottle that fell on the floor, but the cop proceeded to keep me outside of my car, doing all of the sobriety tests for about an hour while I was shivering and my teeth were chattering. It was close to 3:30 when he finally realized I wasn't impaired. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Thank you both for your respective ratings. They were very helpful in working out whether you did or did not enjoy your respective inconveniences. 8 out of 10 would read again. There's a bit in Bryan Cranston's book where he talks about his time as a security guard. His talent was spotting about-to-be shoplifters. His advice? People come into stores because they want something specific. In and out. Watch for the lingerers. Must be rough around Christmas time. Sorry, security guards, I have no clue what to get my mom. UK veteran and ex-Metropolitan Police, here, just found it's all down to experience when reading people. Your mentor is everything and should be a wealth of knowledge. Learn from them. Also, the weirdos tend to be regulars and someone will know them and tell you all you need to know. The regulars will be in an intel database somewhere, so any safety issues should be made aware of for you to control. This includes known aliases. I don't put much consideration on someone's nervousness to the likeliness of them committing a crime. We need reasons or probable cause to determine that. However, someone's jumpiness is a tactical cue to me that they may more likely run or fight, especially if I already have probable cause of a crime occurring. Most people are more scared when stopped by the police, but this fear is different than jumpiness. Fear is a little more subdued than the tension of someone looking for an escape. Another consideration is that if someone suffers from a mental illness, their symptoms are usually clearly different than someone who is plain scared or jumpy. Also, someone who is affected by substances clearly has distinct signs. It's pretty complicated to explain, but simple when observing it in person every day. Ex-cop, still licensed if that matters. You can't always tell. That's why treating everyone as close to the same as possible is important. The average person will change their behavior around a police officer at least a little bit. It can be weird, over-respectful type deal, or they might shut down completely. The average criminal acts nearly the same. However, that's why it's important to be very aware of the person's movements and responses to questions or your own movements. If you ask a person with substances in the car, "Do you have substances in the car?" his eyes will very commonly dart toward where he or she is hiding something, even if it's not substances. That, of course, doesn't give me probable cause to tear their car apart looking for stuff. It's just a red flag. A person who is simply nervous and is not really guilty of a crime will most likely just break eye contact and look somewhere else, such as out of the window, behind you, down at the wheel, among a few other places. Same goes for a person you may simply be suspicious of on the street. Are you carrying any weapons? Will lead to a person carrying a weapon to often touch the area where it is, usually repeatedly, or start to look at where they have hidden a weapon. A person who's just nervous probably won't grab their waistband several times after that question. That is just one example, but it shows the importance of communication. Being aware of the surroundings and subject, and why asking questions is very important. All because a person who's simply nervous and a criminal who is nervous are almost indistinguishable without some digging. As for people who appear totally 100% calm, well, that in and of itself can be a red flag as well. Maybe he or she is calm because they like police. Maybe they are police in a different area. Maybe they really have nothing to hide and a good understanding of police procedures. Or they're a hardened criminal that has no sense of remorse or anxiety over meeting a cop. You never know unless you start to look deeper. So to anyone who feels like cops hate you or are mean, maybe that sheds a bit of light on things. I'm a cop in Arizona. It's important to know the cultural and societal norms of your patrol area. A huge amount of folks are packing heat here, for example. Your average law-abiding citizen will generally use a holster and not be deceptive about the weapon. Bad guys will not be forthcoming. We have some issues with Mexican cartels, and they tend to blend in somewhat, but have weapons in unique calibers, such as .38 Supers. Since we do have a huge Hispanic community, it helps to know the norms of their behavior, which differ somewhat from the white community. A vast majority of the time we'll be dealing with people while investigating specific crimes. There's a huge variety of factors involved in that, but generally speaking, you're going to use 4 of your senses to make educated guesses: sight, smell, touch, and sound. A person whose voice wavers may just be afraid of cops. Combine that with an odor of substances or a suspicious protrusion on their body, then there could be an issue. White cultural knowledge is important. There are some universal signs of deception which you could probably recognize. I spent a year in Afghanistan doing police work as well, and those principles held true there too. To a degree, it's profiling, which is a dirty word but a pragmatic principle. I never feel I act normal around cops. Funny thing is, I have 2 close relatives who are cops. When I act normal around them, they tell me I should respect that they're cops. Sorry, does this illegal activity that we're both participating in bother you all of a sudden? I got a family member who's been a cop since the 80s, basically the Stone Age. He gets nervous when the cops are behind him. Cops can't even tell if they're in the right house. Smart people rarely become cops. In fact, I've known people who failed the entrance tests for getting too high a score. You shoot them all and let God sort them out. Seriously though, my uncle is a sheriff and he said one of the biggest giveaways is people who try to be subtle, but their actions are completely different from someone who has nothing to hide. For example, if they're busting up a party, an underage drinker will nearly immediately set their drink down and push it away about 6 inches after they set it down. The pushing away isn't something you normally do. Everyone is different, but usually the nervous people will be polite and apologetic. Suspicious people will be more agitated and annoyed. Young black man here. I was approached by an officer at a bus stop because of my suspicious behavior. Among 7 other people, I was the only black. I was nervous looking at my watch and in the direction of the bus that I wanted to come through because I was late for work, which was the direction where the cop came from. By the looks of it, probably thought that I was nervous because of his presence. The cop got jumpy, hand on his holster, and forced me to show my ID and backpack for suspicious or things that would compromise me. Didn't even bother to see that the other commuters were talking about the late bus out loud. What's the most messed up thing that you've eavesdropped? I was a kid, maybe 10-ish, and I was homesick from school one day. My dad left my door ajar to hear me in case I started hurling. He thought I was asleep, but I could hear him talking to his best male friend at the time, out in our family room. Dad's friend was telling him about how he cheated on his wife and how good it was. And he asked my dad if he ever cheated on my mum. Even at that age, I knew it was wrong, and my heart raced as I listened for his answer. To this day, I'm in my 30s, I'm very proud of my dad for saying, "No, I had a chance to. My brother's wife put her hand between my legs, but I shoved her away. You know I love my mum's name. I never did tell anyone about that. My parents are still together." First off, I wear hearing aids. When I was in elementary school, I had a mic that was on a necklace and my teacher would wear it. It would transmit to my hearing aid. Anyway, she was talking about her weekend out drinking and sleeping with strangers. It was worse when she realized that she'd left the mic on. This is some sitcom level crap. My daughter is hearing impaired. Similar thing happened to her, except the teacher was talking to another teacher about Christmas presents for her daughter. Same age as mine. When her teacher returned to the classroom, my daughter whispered in her ear, "I think she'll like that." When I was a little kid, like 5 years old, I really wanted this stupid stamp set in the Family Dollar. My mum and I walked in there for her to buy tampons. We found both in the clearance bin. I overheard her talking to the lady at the cash register when price-checking the items about how she only had money for one of the items and that she was going to buy me the stamp set over the tampons that she needed. I'm 21 now and I never told my mum that I heard that. She always pretended that we had enough money, but she would skip meals or give up her stuff to make sure we had enough, and it breaks my heart to think about it. I know it's not super messed up, but still. My husband and I were at McDonald's. We took our son to the play place to try and let him burn off some energy so we could finish grocery shopping. A mother was in there with her 3 kids. One by one, she would make each one of them sit down and was interrogating them. "Where was your dad sat at the spring concert? Who did he sit by? Did he talk to any of the other moms? Was he laughing and smiling when he talked to Carter's mom? Did you guys come home right afterwards?" She was writing it all down. Each child was not allowed to go play unless they answered her questions. What the frick? How to Weaponize Your Children in a Divorce, a step-by-step guide proudly written by McDonald's playground woman. Gross. I was listening to 2 of my kindergarten students talk about Christmas the day before break. One asked, "Do you believe in Santa?" And the other replied, "Yeah, but he doesn't come to my house because I'm in foster care." I was fixing a woman's computer when she got the phone call that her mother had suddenly passed away. She went from powerful executive assistant to fragile little girl in 3 seconds. It was heartbreaking. That's rough. I was once at a conference as like a junior marketing whatever, and me and my boss were in a hotel lobby about to meet with a big deal manager from another company to talk about a deal when he took a call from his wife. She said there was a soldier outside her house with important news that could only be conveyed in person. She wouldn't talk to the guy because she knew what the news would be. Their son was in Iraq. His wife handed her phone to the guy in uniform on their doorstep. "I'm 500 miles away right now. Do you have something important to tell me about my son?" And then he looked at us and said he had to go home and walked away. I've been bitten in the nuts by 2 separate Scottish Terriers. I've never wanted to chase someone down the street and ask to hear the rest of the story so bad in my life. Worked at a summer camp for a few years, and I'm convinced kids don't realize you can hear them even when you're in the same room literally 3 feet away unless you're looking directly at them. Best conversation I've ever heard was between 2 9-year-olds. Kid 1, "My brother is totally going through puberty and he's only 11. Kid 2, "Aw, lucky. I know, he even has armpit hair. If I had armpit hair, I'd shave it off and glue it on my face." That's a great idea. I was flabbergasted. I don't know if this qualifies, but it should. I was a photographer at a wedding, and while the bride was getting ready, I heard 2 bridesmaids, mid-20s, talking. One said to the other about how she recently found out that beans, probably as in the baked variety, were not bits of potato as she had always thought. They're fricking beans. When I read this, I thought it would be the stereotypical "she screwed the best man" or something like that. I'm kinda pleased with the outcome here. I was at Disney in high school, and I heard a guy say to someone, "You're tiggity, but ain't good enough to eat, so put your shoes back on." I'm 35 and still have no idea what that meant. Not so much messed up, just sad. Around 2004 or 2005, I was at a meeting. During a bathroom break, I heard 2 men talking. One of them had a brother who was killed in the September 11th attack on the Pentagon. Shortly after the attack, the brother's widow gave birth to their 2nd child. A year or so later, the mother died of a terminal illness. The man speaking adopted his brother's kids. He and his wife had never planned on having kids, but they stepped up to raise them. It was a big adjustment, but he loved the kids and was doing the best that he could for them. When the police showed up at my door to tell me that my upstairs neighbor was dead, I heard the EMTs say, "We're gonna have to double bag him." Then I heard my neighbor's double-bagged body being dragged down the narrow staircase because a stretcher wouldn't fit him. Thump, thump, thump. For what it's worth, the EMTs and police were also upset about having to do that. I picked up the house phone to find a conversation already in progress. And that's how I learned my stepdad was having an affair with his brother's wife. As a 14-year-old super shy busboy at a restaurant in my hometown, terrified of the early 20s waitresses, setting up a banquet while the waitresses were chatting in the kitchen with the door open, I overheard the following. "What do you think of that new kid? Is he all right in the head or something? Ah, I think he's cute. Maybe he's just slow." Took a few years to get over that one. A bunch of junkies planning on how they're going to rob someone for money to get their next hit. I got out of there real fast. My brother overheard my dad telling Mum he wished that I had gone to Vietnam. That put at least 10 layers of security between us for more than 10 years. One coworker to another as I walked in. "I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't like black people. I just don't think I could join the Klan." Oh God. Moments ago I was telling a likely former friend that he'd surpassed his quota of saying, "I'm not a racist, but," and now I come across, "I'm a racist, but," and I think I've interneted enough today. 2 points. Firstly, good on the latter person for calling out their coworker. Also, holy crap, where in the US was that first story from? And if you're already an admitted racist, what was your reason for not joining? The fricking membership payments? When I was 10 or 11, I overheard my stepmom talking to my friend's mum about my puppy that had recently disappeared. I learned the puppy had not run away, but that my stepmom had drove it to the middle of nowhere and, I quote, set it free because she didn't want to have a puppy in the house. For those of you asking about my stepmom, she's literally the worst human being I've ever met. It's worth mentioning that she's got rid of my possessions before without asking, giving my clothes or toys to Goodwill while I was at school. I've asked her a few times about what really happened, and I gave her the opportunity to come clean. But she's always evasive about the whole thing. She'll eventually get what's coming to her. I hope she suffers as much as possible in her life and dies painfully. I caught my dad choking his chicken when I was in high school. I woke up really early and went to get a drink. I walked down the stairs and saw the TV was on and playing one of those commercials for Girls Gone Wild. I looked at the couch and my dad was just sitting there jerking it. But he didn't notice me because my dad was quite old and had bad hearing. I don't know if he saw me, but I rushed to the bathroom and stayed quiet in the dark until I thought he was finished. I felt bad for him and wanted him to at least get it done. Best single dad in the world, and I miss him, and I always laugh at that memory. I was a waitress, and I just took an order from a table of students that were all older than 18. One of them seemed pretty dim with their questions they were asking me, but nothing too stupid. One of her friends ordered duck gyoza. As I walked away, I heard her ask her friends what a duck was, and them start to explain. How the hell do you get to be over 18 and not know what a fricking duck is? My brother breaking up with his girlfriend. I learned from their conversation that they used latex protection for doing the deed, even though she was pretty allergic. The thing is, she didn't tell my brother this until they were on a break. And they were at it all the time. She would hide her infections and such from him for whatever reason. My dad's girlfriend is a special education teacher. I heard her telling my dad about a student she had with Down's syndrome. The kid had pretty crappy parents and lived in the rough part of town. Anyways, he never brushed his teeth, and as a result, his teeth were rotting, and he had to get them all pulled. He was given pain medication, but his mother ended up taking all the pills herself. The boy would be in so much pain in class that he would have to be taken out of class because he couldn't stop yelling. He yelled so much that the stitches in his mouth ultimately ripped. As far as I know, the boy still lives with his mother. I don't know why nothing was done about this. It makes me angry. She did report it, but for some reason or another, the mother still has custody. She didn't go into it much and acted as though it wasn't something she wanted to talk about, so I didn't ask further questions. I overheard my wife say, "You look really handsome, babe." She was on a FaceTime call with the guy she was cheating on me with and didn't hear me come in early from work. Still the hardest thing I've ever heard. I listened in the hallway for a few minutes and then packed a bag and left. 10 years of marriage and we have a 2-year-old. It's pretty insane. I moved out and divorce is final in October. She moved in with him. Life's rough sometimes. It'll get better, I hope. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work from home for a company based in Los Angeles, and each morning my engineering team convenes for a meeting. The new guy forgot to mute his headset, and we all tortuously ignored him, tickling his pickle for 5 minutes. Our meeting was like, yeah, so I committed those changes to and today I'll be working on changes to the mobile report. I should mention that if someone is talking or driving or whatever in the background, we always let them know if they need to go on mute. In this case, though, 15 people sat on the phone and talked over him. I'm not sure if it was a lack of guts or if we just didn't have the heart to embarrass him, but there was no mistaking what we heard. Sat on a bus home from work a couple of years back. An attractive young lady, blonde, in her 20s and dressed in smart business gear, got on and took a seat. If you'd seen the state of the bus, usually you'd understand why she caught my attention. Anyway, she picks up the phone and starts having a full conversation. It was the biggest 180 on a first impression I've ever had. Starts talking about her 2 kids who got taken into care because her and her ex couldn't stop beating each other up. The cracker of a quote was, "I'm not even sure they'll let me keep the one inside me yet." All this was a soundtrack to a silent bus. Not really eavesdropping when it's so in your face, but shocking all the same as this fairly normal 20-something revealed her openly mental home life. Let's hope that it was made up and intentionally loud to keep the possibility of unwanted suitors away. I was sitting next to a cutesy couple in 10th grade English class, and I saw her mouth the words, "I'm pregnant." I can see the plane crash going on through his eyes. I'm sure I've heard worse, but my memory is that of a goldfish. And in case you're wondering, they did have a happy ending. They moved in with each other down at their families in Idaho or Ohio or something, and they were very sweet people. Also, I took an extra English class and they doubled up on English that year. Our high school worked with 4 periods per semester with different classes. So it was technically an 11th grade English class and they were seniors. Sorry I didn't include it, so it's not as bad. But there was already a 10th grader with a 1.5-year-old, or in new mother language, 18-month-old, so it wouldn't be surprising to me if they were actually 10th graders. I woke up around midnight on Easter when I was about 6 to hopefully get a glimpse of the Easter Bunny, only to hear my mum crying to my dad on the phone, divorced, to come and get my brother and I because she has no money to get us any chocolate. She was hysterical. I went back to bed and pretended to be surprised when my dad was there in the morning to come and get us. He told us that the Easter Bunny got mixed up about what house we were going to be at. Props to your mum for asking for help when she needed it, and props to your dad for giving the correct answer. Yep, although we don't know what the full story was here, there's at least a small uplifting show of co-parenting after a divorce. I was at a music festival a few years back, asleep in the tent at about 9:30 a.m., and I woke up to 2 guys speaking in panicked voices outside the tent, saying, "I know we gave him the pills, but it wasn't our fault he took them. It's not our fault. We brought him to the first aid tent. What more could we do?" and more to that effect. They also said that they'd written on his arm that he'd taken 5 pills and dropped him at the first aid tent. As soon as I heard them leave, I stuck my head out of the tent to see my best friend with her head out of her tent, both of us wondering what the frick that was about. Then we found a bag of white powder and about 25 pills in baggies, which these guys had just dropped to get rid of any evidence. Maybe an hour later, we heard that someone had died at the festival from taking 5 pills and overdosing. The penny dropped as we joined the dots between the conversation we'd overheard, the discarded substances, and the death. Very creepy. Was once walking behind 2 really good-looking girls in the street and heard one of them say to the other, "I was so constipated yesterday, I just wanted to get it out with an ice cream scooper." My mother recently said she'd been constipated so long it felt like she had appendicitis, and she practically needed a jackhammer to get the crap out of me. Thanks for that, Mum. Once I got a ride in the casual commute lane with 2 women in a gold Mercedes. I sat in the back while they carried on with their conversation. They spent about 10 minutes talking about a friend of theirs who was looking so great after she had lost a ton of weight. After a pause, one of them said, "Well, it's too bad about the cancer." 3 girls were together at a bus stop. I was behind them. One was telling a story as the others listened. Girl number 1, She called me a dirty, lying hussy and she threw her bottle at me, and it shattered on the wall, nearly hitting me. Oh my god, for real? Really? Yeah. Then I told her to F off and choke on an eggplant before I slammed the door and left. Oh my god, what a B-word. I know, right? That's the last time I go to visit my aunt during withdrawals. My boss screwing the secretary in the break room. Did they not realize that you were still there, or did they not care? This morning, my brother overheard two schoolboys talking about Chloe refusing to do hand stuff to Jake, so Jake asked her friend instead. Heard this conversation at my dining hall. Don't eat fries that you dropped on the floor, that's disgusting. Sarah, I've literally had my tongue in your butthole. I think I'm fine. About 11 years ago, at high school, one of my friends found her father hung in the backyard. They were a really nice family and he was a great guy too. They had these cafes at libraries and the food was great. But his wife had an affair with her personal trainer and probably he knew. And if I recall correctly, they had some financial issues as well. He arranged his clothes for the next day as he did every day. It was a shock for everyone. We were in the middle of a class when we discovered it. We gathered ourselves in the school's coordinator, and after some discussion, he let us leave early to support our friend. She was in shock, complete disbelief, wasn't even crying. The funeral was arranged for the next day. His family flew in from another state to say their last goodbyes. It was scheduled to 3 p.m., and after the priest's speech, he avoided any hell citation for some reason and just said something about disturbed souls and their path to heaven. Then they started burying him, and the widow starts to cry really hard. Then I overheard one of his relatives, probably the guy's sister. What the frick does she think she's doing? She killed him. Oh my god, I hate her so much. It's not as messed up as others' comments, but the suffering and hate mixed together made this day really unforgettable. A very young girl gave her mother a picture she drew as a gift while on public transportation. The mother then rudely rejected the gift. That made me quite sad. I only had her so I didn't have to go to work, said my mother about my younger sister. Turns out that as I got old enough to need less supervision, my mother realized that she'd suddenly be expected to actually make financial contributions like a normal person. That clearly wasn't for her, so she accidentally got pregante again. Took me a long time to realize what I'd actually heard. I'm aware she's a scumbag, and this is just one example of how. We no longer speak, and a decade after making that decision, I'm still glad of it. College dining hall. Me and my best friends, 5 or 6 of us maybe, heard a boy at the next table start to brag about something. He's clearly an upper-class man, older than 21, so while it could have been a party, it wasn't likely, so we started to eavesdrop. Little by little, we're just getting angrier and angrier. He's bragging on about how he adopted this kitten and tortured it to death. His buddy has got it all on camera, just going on and on about what he did to this poor animal. My buddy is a huge cat lover and we basically had to restrain him. Reports were filed and the phone was seized. One nice twist to the story, though, is that the cat torturer was caught and an unspeakable act offender was also caught. How, you might ask? Yeah, the cameraman had taken phone videos of himself roofying and performing the unspeakable act on girls at a local bar. So 2 criminals were caught, I guess. Overheard the end of a conversation that completed with a very large, emo, gay Mexican boy telling an incredibly skinny girl, and then I said to her, "That's the bed I did your brother in," and I slapped her in the face. If you were in a restaurant next to those two, the rules of comedy dictate that you had to abruptly shout, "Check please," and hightail it out of there. When I was 16, I served a customer who was switching between ordering food with me and organizing for somebody to go and beat up a guy for hitting a significant female in his life. Once overheard a few people talking about kidnaps on my work. They were talking about doing it. I work in a restaurant in Brazil, and they were 4 guys talking about kidnapping someone. They were deadly serious. I overheard them enough through a thin wall. The worst part? They were cops. They still come to eat here from time to time and are notoriously dirty. One of them has a $500,000 car, while getting less than $2,000 per month. I never did anything about it. Who would I call? The other dirty cops? It's not creepy if you go into her locker and check her timetable. Yes, Chuck, it really is creepy. I was traveling with a friend through Honduras, and in the hostel we were staying at, we met this cool Aussie lesbian. One morning they were chatting right next to me as I woke up, but I didn't immediately get up and start talking. I realized they were talking about me. My friend, who I'd known for a few years and had a friend with benefits thing with in the past, was telling her that she thought I was transgender. I'm not. It was really strange to hear someone tell an almost complete stranger her opinion about my personal gender identity. I was at a 24-hour diner and breakfast joint in DC on a Sunday. A guy and two trashy-looking women at the counter next to us were planning out an adult film shoot. Not joking about it or anything, like it was all set and they were just figuring out some details. One time my mom told me to text my dad about something. I completely forgot what it was, and I just saw a crap ton of dirty messages. Rest in peace, soul and innocence. In a weird sort of way, this makes me happiest of all the responses. Everyone else is talking about terrible things happening and weird crap going on, but this one still shows parents keeping it spicy in a modern way, even after having kids. What amazing comebacks have you heard come out of nowhere? In 10th grade, my friend called a classmate illiterate. He replied, "Joke's on you, I don't know what that means." I think about that a lot. Story I heard from a parent-teacher conference. A mum got back a report for her son's school stating that he was illiterate. Her response? "That's a dirty lie. His dad and I were married 2 days before he was born." My grandma was playing bridge with her friends and the subject of age did come up. My grandma said she was 63 and the next woman said, "A lady doesn't discuss such things." So my grandma said, "Oh, don't worry, dear. I'm sure when I'm your age I won't want to discuss it either." Damn, I've noticed that old people can throw shade that we can only marvel at. They've got this sweet experience that can only come with age and a lifetime to hone their skills. There was this guy at a frat party that whipped out his pecker in front of this girl and asked her what it looked like. Without missing a beat, she replied, "It looks like a male member, only smaller." My mother-in-law is 4'11". She once asked a 6'5" coworker of mine if he played basketball, to which he replied, "No, do you play miniature golf?" My friend is 4'10". A larger man at work likes to constantly point this out to her, as if she's in some way unaware of it. One day she got sick of him. It went something along the lines of him saying, "Well, at least I'm not a short ass like you are," and her saying, "At least I'm not fat like you." Well, that's going a bit far, isn't it? I don't see how. I can't do anything about being short. You could lose weight. I had this one teacher who would say, "In a battle of wits, you have come unarmed." When he said that to one of the students in my class one day, the student promptly responded, "Then I challenge you to a battle of hair." I should note that the teacher was bald. I feel like I'm just experiencing all of the cut content from the sword insult fighting in the Monkey Island games. Keep it coming, people. My team leader said at work, "Have you tried playing dad to 40 kids?" referring to us regular employees as the children. My coworker, without missing a beat, replies, "Have you ever had a deadbeat dad?" I was dying. "Your mom is a lady of the night. Well, at least mine charges." A friend in 6th grade came to school with a black eye. Everyone was naturally asking what had happened. This girl said, "Your white trash dad probably beat you," in front of everybody. He responded with, "At least I have a dad." Her dad had self-deleted 2 years earlier. I'd say he took it too far, but it was very quick and burned her like 1,000 suns. When Jimmy Carr began in one of his sets by saying, "First time I was ever in bed with someone," and a girl in the crowd said, "You mean yesterday?" The crowd went wild with laughter, and he waited for everyone to quiet down and then with perfect timing said, "I'm glad you remember." Years ago, I was out drinking with friends and some people we'd just met, including a guy I was interested in. There was a lot of banter flying back and forth. In an effort to seem cool to our new acquaintances, I threw a lame, slightly personal insult to my friend across the table. I don't even really remember what it was, as it was so long ago, but probably along the lines of your mum joke. Despite obviously hearing what I'd said, he looked directly at me and said in a non-aggressive way, "Sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that you said?" Feeling a little stupid at this point, I repeated it. Once again, louder, and our company was paying attention now, he said, "Oh, I didn't get it that time either. What did you say?" At that point, the table had fallen silent, and with all eyes on me, I felt so small and embarrassed and just mumbled, "Never mind," into my drink. Looking back, he clearly knew exactly what he was doing, and I've used this tactic since. It's so simple yet effective, and guaranteed to make your opponent want the earth to swallow them whole. I wasn't there, but my brother overheard 2 kids on a bus playing a game, where you can see who can yell the words for male member the loudest. It got too loud, and the bus driver, who was a woman in maybe her 50s, out of the blue yelled, "Sounds like it's coming from someone who wishes they had one." The entire bus erupted in laughter. President Calvin Coolidge was famously taciturn. His campaign train stopped briefly in one town. A woman called out, "Mr. Coolidge, my husband bet me I couldn't get you to say more than 2 words. Now, what do you say to that?" The train lurched into motion. "You lose," he said. My buddy and I used to hang out with a guy that always smelled. He barely showered, even before work, and we would always give him crap for that. One day, my buddy was driving and he let a toot go. It didn't smell that bad, but the guy who smelled made a comment along the lines of, "God, even your toots are weak." And my buddy, without hesitation, says, "It's because your body odor is covering it up." I had a friend who was adopted. She was actually a huge bully and made fun of me because my mum worked 3 jobs and so she was never home. One day she was in bully mode and says, "At least my mum loves me enough to stay home and be with me." And I clapped back with, "At least my real mum loved me enough to keep me." She then smacked me. She got in trouble and so did I, but she never made fun of my mum for not being home again. This guy brought a new lunchbox to school and was being made fun of by this girl in a wheelchair. She told him, "Nice lunchbox," to which he immediately responded, "Nice legs." Back in high school, I was president of the role-playing game club. It was a real shell organization. We just existed so that on Fridays we could play in an English teacher's classroom after school, and we needed to keep the bathrooms open. Summer came and something like 3/4 of the squad were sentenced to summer school. So on most days we'd get together to play some D&D on the abandoned lunch quad until it got dark. One day these 2 girls came up to the group. Bear in mind, we're playing D&D, so we largely have no ability to converse with females. And these are your more adventurous girls from school, but they were very chill, just casually talking with us about what we were doing and all that jazz. One of them started playing with my bike helmet. It was old as hell, and the glue holding the inner styrofoam to the outer shell was all gone, and they'd come apart if you grabbed one and not the other. So this girl picks up my helmet to ask about all the ski stickers on it, and the foam fell out. "Your helmet sucks wang," she declared. It was an instinct, my reaction, born of long nights chugging energy drinks and rolling dice. Maybe your head just sucks wang. Now, if this interaction happened between my buddy Nikolai and I, that would have been funny, but she just got offended and left. I once read that Margot Fontaine was having dinner with Jean Harlow and a group of other people, and Jean kept calling her Margot, pronouncing the T. Fontaine said, "No, Jean, the T is silent, as in Harlow." 1930s savagery right there. A male colleague was once telling us how he fell asleep during oral fun times the night before. My other colleague Ed immediately asked, "What woke you up, the stiff eggplant hitting the back of your throat?" "No need to call me Sir, Professor." Were you born like this, or did you follow a course? A bully calls an idiot the C word. The idiot says, "You are what you eat." The bully laughs. The idiot says, "I guess that makes you a butthole." Bully picked on a quiet kid, and the quiet kid smashed his face to a wall. You know, I'm not sure if this latest one quite matches the others, but maybe it was his comeback in life after a couple of years of quietly taking crap. So we'll use it. And now for some historical burns from a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Winston Churchill to Lady Astor after she called him disgustingly drunk. "I may be drunk, miss, but in the morning I will be sober, and you will still be ugly." Also from Winston Churchill and some other woman, "If you were my husband, I'd poison your tea, and madam, if you were my wife, I'd drink it." Also, for premiere of his play Pygmalion, George Bernard Shaw sent Churchill tickets with a note, "Bring a friend if you have one." And Churchill's response was, "Can't make opening night, but will come second night if you have one." A guy stole my friend's soccer ball one day. We were 13, so I watched as she went up to get it back. He said he wouldn't give it back unless she gave him a BJ. She responded with, "Sorry, I can't. My mum told me not to put small things in my mouth." She then snatched the soccer ball and walked away happily. Hey, let's keep my mom out of this, and I'll keep out of your mom. A mean girl on the school bus said to me, "You're one of the ugliest dudes I've ever seen, Joe." And I said, "Well, Tara, looks like we have something in common." The whole bus started cracking up laughing, and she was really angry. Never said a word to me ever again. My brother and I were about 12 and 10 respectively, and we went skiing in Vermont for the day. But we didn't really ski, and we certainly didn't have any nice gear or clothes, so my brother wore the only snowsuit he had, which was a one-piece, and it was brown, like dark brown, and he put on his brown hat. We were gliding down a pass that was under the ski lift when I fell down and my brother stopped right next to me to help me up. The guy on the lift above me looks down at us and screams, "Hey, Kitten Brown, you look like a brown piece of crap." And my brother, with perfect comedic timing, says in his high-pitched, prepubescent voice, "That's what your mother said when I pulled my wang out of her butt." I was hysterical. I couldn't stop laughing, and everyone that was on the lift started laughing too. And my brother, of course, took off his brown mittens to give him the finger. I'm still laughing. My brother had a wart on his hand and a little bottle of medicine that he was using, I don't know, a few times a day maybe. My friend Julie was over, and the three of us were sitting and chatting. My brother was casually tossing the little bottle in the air and catching it. Julie, who was, let's be honest, a snobby jerk, said, "Gee, I wish I were as cool as you with your wart medicine." And my brother said, very seriously, "I'm sorry, Julie, I'd be happy to share with you, but there isn't enough to cover your entire head." Kumail Nanjiani had a wicked comeback while reading mean tweets. The tweet said, "Is Kumail Nanjiani's wang multiple colors?" And Kumail said, "Yes, every color of your mum's lipstick. I just about died." A friend of mine was welding, and this D-bag at his workplace says while overlooking it, "That's gonna come out messed up." And my friend replied immediately with, "That's what the doctor told your parents at the first ultrasound." Huh? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Junior high, I had a science teacher that looking back was pretty cool. Used to let everyone give him a hard time and was pretty goofy and such. I don't remember what prompted it, but one of my classmates asked a question and he answered, "Don't set unrealistic expectations." And my friend, not the person who asked the initial question, jumped in, "Then why are you teaching?" Student is whispering to a classmate while teacher is speaking, 6th grade math, and the teacher says, "Am I interrupting something?" And the student says, "Yeah, but don't let it happen again. Epic." Yeah, well, the jerk store called and they're running out of you. When I was younger, me and my brother were having a roast battle of sorts to say the most messed up, funny stuff that we could say to each other. My mum walked in and says, "Oh look, a battle of wits between unarmed opponents." Needless to say, that put a swift end to our attempted humor. A guy who played in the samurai faction in For Honor came in talking crap about the knight players, and one of them responded with, "Keep it up and the next king won't be decided by the sword in the stone, but by who can pull my boot from your butt." I still laugh at it to this day, even though I haven't played For Honor in forever. One of my brothers said, "Stop talking crap." The other one said, "Everything that comes out of my mouth is sweet." Yeah, no wonder you're fat as frick. Whenever someone says, "F you," I say, "Pay me." It stumps a lot of people, sometimes resulting with an, "Ugh, F you." So I say again, "Well, pay me." One time I was at Geeks Who Drink Bar Trivia here in Dallas. Me and the other two people on my team were in 3rd place during the 6th round score announcement. The first place team had a full group of 5 or 6 people. After the trivia master announced the scores, I drunkenly shouted out loud, "Yeah, but how many people are on their team?" And the trivia master overheard me, and he instantly said in the microphone so everyone could hear, "Enough to kick your fricking butt." It was such a good retort that I wasn't even mad, and he was right. Look man, trivia masters at these things are often as not stand-up comedians who are doing extra gigs to make ends meet. Going toe-to-toe with one of them is not for the faint-hearted, and I'm not surprised you got burned. One of my friends got into an argument at a bar with someone else, and the guy walked up to him and tried choking him out with one hand from the front. My friend just smiled the whole time, and when a bouncer grabbed the guy choking my friend and was escorting him out, my friend yelled, "I've banged chicks who choked me harder than that." I was really proud of him. Last day of 5th grade, a short, chubby kid was going around the teacherless classroom giving out quick roasts. He gets to me and says, "Hey you, your head looks like a basketball." I quickly replied, "It looks like you ate a basketball." I'm still very proud of 5th grade me. The guy says, "You effed up, John." And John says, "I only F up when my wife's on top." I know you are, but what am I? I can't tell you, 'cause you'll cry. Adlai Stevenson ran for president twice in 1952 and 1956. A woman gushed at him, "Mr. Stevenson, you have the vote of every thinking American." And his reply was, "Sorry, ma'am, I need a majority." Adlai was quite witty and a true statesman. My folks were yellow dog Democrats who would vote for a yellow dog on the ballot instead of a Republican, and told me how cool he was. When my bro was about 10, it used to be my job to take him for his Saturday morning soccer game. It was run by his school and they'd play other school groups. It sucked as a teenager, but I mostly just hung out with the other mums and cut up oranges and stuff. I've got to mention that I live in a pretty white area, and my brother and I look absolutely and unapologetically Muslim, because we are. Anyway, my little brother's team came off the field after absolutely thrashing another school. The school is in a pretty rural, read racist, area, and one of the kids ran up to my bro and screams, "You learn how to play like that in terror bombing camp?" And my bro picks up an orange and replies, "Yeah, we practice against the skinhead youth on Sundays. See you there." And he threw an orange at him. Sophomore year of high school, 1995. A close friend of mine had just gotten her first of what would be eventually many tattoos, a rubber ducky on her belly, just beside her navel. We had a church camp thing that weekend and she tried to keep it covered as much as she could, but she had to keep applying Neosporin and such, so we kept ducking out to hallways and spare conference rooms at this massive church, so she could take care of business and I'd look out for any adults who might yell at her for the tattoo. So maybe the 5th time we went out to get her tattoo some air, these girls from another church sneak out and follow us. Picture the cast of Mean Girls. Wealthy, snotty, preppy, pretty, and totally up their own butts. They're all blonde, thin as rails, and dressed like a Land's End advertisement. My friend and I were also skinny blondes, but she dressed grunge and I was into the skater, raver look at the same time. A total poser, as I didn't do substances, but I had a pixie haircut with a green streak in it, and I wore little boys' polo shirts and enormous pants. Not the type these girls thought of as cool. Anyway, the lead blonde clone walks up to us and asks in her flat valley girl voice, "Oh my god, is that a tattoo?" And my friend goes, "Yep," as she's dabbing little spots of blood away and applying ointment. And the girl goes, "Is it real?" And my friend goes, "No, it's fake, and so is the blood." Blondie catches her sarcasm, amazingly enough, and stares hard at my friend's belly for a moment and asks, "What's going to happen when you get fat?" And without missing a beat or even looking up from what she's doing, my friend said, "I don't know. What happened when you got fat?" The girl was open-mouthed for a second and then lamely called her the B-word and stalked off with her entourage. But I could tell my friend got to her. She was the comeback goddess. She always knew exactly what to say to level a person who crossed her. My brother brought his college girlfriend home with him during Christmas break. Dad's pulling a double shift, and my mum ran off to France with some fancy European guy, and I'm teabagging my classmates on Halo 3. The two of them get bored just sitting there on the couch since I'm not much of a conversationalist. Anyway, one thing leads to another, if you know what I mean. Unfortunately for them, my dad's boss had a Scrooge epiphany and sent them home early for Christmas Eve. So Dad walks in carrying this giant Christmas ham to surprise us with, only to find his eldest son doing something pretty specific with his girlfriend's butt. Dad goes full Leviticus on my bro and declares the butt an unclean organ and then said it was detestable to practice sodomy in front of me. I tried to defend my brother with the old, "I've seen worse on the internet" defense, but Dad just talked over me. The disrespect teed off my brother and he tore into my dad. Maybe if you ate Mom's booty more, she wouldn't have left us. Brutal perhaps, but it did shut down Dad's biblical rant. Merry Christmas, everyone. When we were kids, my older brother and I were arguing about some crap and I said, "I knew that before you were born." Without hesitation, he replied, "Did you have a library in your part of Dad's ball bag?" And we both wet ourselves laughing for 5 minutes. There was once a kid in 7th grade that was at least a foot shorter than me, and he was trying to roast me. At one point, I just interrupted him and said, "Hey, at least I can go on the fricking Ferris wheel." I and those around me got a kick out of that. "Your mom's a lesbian." "Yeah, with your mom." Anytime a guy says he has a big wang, I tell him, "Spit it out, it isn't yours." My uncle, a genial old man with a beard sitting in a pub. A younger guy looks at him and says, "What the frick are you looking at?" My uncle says, "Oh, sorry, sonny. If you don't know what the frick you are, I'm afraid I can't help you." The younger guy looked puzzled for a moment and then decided it wasn't worth the intellectual headache of pushing it further. Guys, many people in the comments of these stories are pointing out that a lot of the elderly have razor-sharp wits and do not give an F. Don't go up against them unless you're bringing your insult A-game. I've been rejected by better people than you. My dad once told my 17-year-old brother, "You're just mad because the best part of you ran down the crack of your mum's butt." This loser walked into class. The teacher said, "You're late," and he instantly said, "A wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to." He was lucky the teacher knew Lord of the Rings. A slightly chubby girl told my friend, who admittedly had a rather bad neckbeard, that he should shave. Without skipping a beat, he told her she should shave the pounds off. A guy with no chin said, "At least I don't have 2 chins." And the guy with 2 chins said, "At least I have 1. Did I stutter? Yes. Then you heard me twice. My ex-boss was in a bar in Onslow watching England valiantly lose in heartbreaking style in a soccer tournament to Germany yet again, when he got accidentally bumped into by a German fan as he was reversing without due attention. "Oh, sorry," apologized the German chap. "For which world war?" quips Nick. Apparently the punch came out of nowhere. I worked in a paint shop for a while and got really good at guy talk. One day, while walking into the office, one of the guys started making fun of me because I wash my hands. Something along the lines of, "Don't forget to wash your hands, little lady." I'm a guy. And I replied without even thinking, "Yeah, no, I don't want to give your girl a yeasty." My short friend made some snarky comment and others were gassing her up. She said, "Yeah, I know how to throw shade." And then I said, "What do you know about throwing shade? You're not even tall enough to cast a shadow." And that's the comeback I'm the most proud of. My sister was being a total witch to me, like attacking my weight, my career, my grades. After being fed up, I left the room, and before passing through the door, I turned and said, "Jon Snow comes back to life next episode," and I left. She was catching up with the show. Can you get away with mouthing off to a cop? Alright, can you say your alphabet to J for me? Oh, sure. Which one of you guys is J? I'd just picked up my paycheck back in high school and must have been 16 or 17 and a fairly new driver. An officer pulled me over for not pulling completely into the road, going from driveway to driveway, like I drove 10 feet on the wrong side, but there was no traffic. The officer said, "Can you even afford a ticket as a new driver?" And my dumb butt said, "I did just pick up my paycheck." It wasn't until afterwards that I thought more along the lines of having demerit points on my license is more than likely what he meant. He let me go with a warning. Driving through Kansas City and I got pulled over. I was wearing a Twins cap. The cop said something about being ready to give me a warning, but then he saw my cap, and I said, "Hey, it's not like the Royals and Twins have been good at the same time." He said he's actually a Cubs fan, and I couldn't stop myself from saying, "Oh, I'm sorry." He laughed and gave me a warning. We were in a car park just off the motorway in a Toyota MR2. The police pulled in and got out of their car. One of the officers put his hand on the bonnet, the hood, of the MR2 and said, "Bonnet's a bit hot. Been ragging it, have we?" And I replied, "Funny that, mate. It's rear engine." The second officer found it hilarious, and the first looked incredibly embarrassed. I was waiting to buy something at a store, but there was no one behind the cash register. There was already a lady in front of me who seemed to have been waiting for a while. We rang the little bell a couple of times, but no one appeared. After waiting some time, I joked, "We should just steal this stuff. That will get their attention." The lady in front of me responded by showing me her dry cleaning bag, full of police uniforms. So I said the first thing that came to mind. "You have to get your uniforms dry cleaned? Does that get expensive?" And we ended up having a fairly cheerful conversation about dress codes and employee perks, and the laundry facilities in different neighborhood apartment buildings, and the turnaround time of different neighborhood dry cleaners until the cashier finally showed up. That sounds exactly like my luck. Of all the people to make that joke to, it had to be a gosh darn law enforcer. Luckily, this lady sounded chill. Got pulled over on my motorcycle. The cop said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt?" He got a chuckle, and I only got a warning. The next cop didn't find it nearly as amusing. Cop said to me, "Were you eating an apple while driving?" "Can't I eat while I drive?" "No. But I can smoke, right?" "Yeah." Then I was smoking the apple. I once pulled myself over after I thought I blew through a red light, since there was a cop right there. I was a new driver, saw him and freaked out. He asked me why he shouldn't write me a ticket, and I told him, "I really don't want you to?" Got off with a warning. I work nights, so the cops will occasionally cruise through our parking lot in the middle of nowhere and just check things out. I was outside on my break smoking and playing Jetpack Joyride when they lowered their window. "What are you doing here at this time of night?" "My fricking job. Why are you out here at this time of night?" "Our fricking jobs. Have a nice night." "You too." Montreal cops are nice, despite their silly trousers. He asked me if I had a dead body in my back seat. I said, "Oh, totally. You want to meet him? He's kind of shy." He laughed and told his partner, "He said totally," took my license, sat in their car for a minute and then drove up next to me, handed me my cards from their window and drove off. I later realized that a coat and hat were on top of a mess in my back seat and actually could have looked like a dead body. A cop pulled me and my friend over when we were both 17. Pretty sure he just saw a couple of teens in a car late at night and figured we were up to no good. That being said, we had a lot of green herb in the car, in a bag. The cop came over and said, "So, you have anything illegal in your car?" "Just my good looks," I reply. The cop laughs and lets us leave. My heart just about gave out, it was beating so fast. He told me how much over the limit I was going, and I said, "Well, you looked bored sitting there, so I figured I'd give you something to do." He laughed and let me off the whole thing with a warning. I was flying back from Europe once. At the Brussels airport, I brought a jar of mustard in duty-free. They sealed it in the special bag. Put it in my carry-on. Got it through customs, no problem. Bringing it back through TSA in the US, at a major international airport, it gets confiscated. It's in a sealed jar, in a sealed bag, having clearly been brought at an airport and just brought through an international border. The TSA guy confiscates it. I told him to keep saving the country one jar of mustard at a time. Yeah, TSA customs are stupid. When I was 13 and coming back from vacation in England, I had some guy completely flip his crap, screaming at me because I dared to pull my old iPod out of my pocket for 2 seconds to check the time, not realizing that was a problem. I got yelled at by some grouchy middle-aged guy and he went on for a solid minute over it. Like, is it really necessary to flip crap on some kid over something so stupid? Just say, "Hey, that's not allowed. Put it away." My Uber driver was telling me a story about how he got pulled over for going 90 on a sharp turn. The radar was obviously malfunctioning because he would either have flipped his car or slid off the road if he was going that fast. The motorcycle cop was too stupid to figure this out and threatened to arrest him, so he said, "What are you gonna do, put me on the back of your bike?" The cop got super teed off and actually arrested him and gave him the ticket, and the cop lied about where he clocked the Uber driver. Luckily, the Uber driver had a dash cam and got the ticket and all other charges dropped. But damn, the gall and stupidity of that cop make me feel sorry for whoever else has to deal with him. I don't know what happened to the cop, guys. Yeah, lying under oath is bad, but I don't know what happened to anyone that isn't the Uber driver. In college, I once thanked a cop for not being a jerk about it, like most officers are, after getting ticketed. He wrote it all down, and the judge repeated that to me when I fought the ticket in court. She was clearly amused, and I got out of the ticket. He asked why I was going 52 and a 35, and I told him, general lack of awareness. This didn't get me out of the ticket, but it gave the cop a pretty good laugh. Years ago, during a heavy substance-fueled bender at a London festival, I walked up to some policemen and said, "Guess what I'm on?" They smirked and told me to move along. I had one ask, "You were speeding, so why shouldn't I give you a citation?" I said, "I'm not worth the paperwork." He gave me a little half-smile for a brief second, before his face returned to the stern face that he had the entire encounter. My friend got pulled over doing 20 over. We were college kids at the time. Officer walks over to the window and does his normal, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" routine, and then turns to me when it's all done and asks, "So, should I give your friend here a ticket?" And with a smile I said, "Yes, sir, he most likely deserves it." The cop laughed, smiled, and walked away. Well, you got off the ticket. I do wonder if you got a vicious punch in the arm as soon as the cop pulled away, though. My birthday 3 years ago. I was crossing the street to my car, and suddenly 2 squad cars pull up, each with 2 officers in them for some reason. As I was unlocking my car, all 4 got out of their cars and approached me. One of them asked me to please stop and walk over to them. I did. He then asked if I knew why they were stopping me, to which I replied, "I'm assuming you're strippers." "Excuse me?" "Yeah, you must be strippers. It's my birthday and 4 suspiciously good-looking police officers just stopped me for absolutely no reason. 3 of them laughed and 1 did not. I then had to wait for 10 minutes while he wrote me a warning for jaywalking. When I was a kid, my parents had one of those Oldsmobile Silhouette minivans with the long nose. I was driving it and I accelerated to get through a yellow light before it turned red. That's when the cop turned on the lights. When he got to the window, he asked, "Do you know what a yellow light means, son?" I said, "That means it's going to turn red soon." He said, "No, it means clear the intersection." I told him, Officer, with the size of this vehicle and the rate I was moving, had anything entered the intersection, I'd have cleared it right out, I promise. He laughed and told me that since I'd caught him off guard and made him laugh, he would let me off with a warning. Me and my 3 friends made a big cranberry vodka in a liter cranberry bottle, and we were walking towards a bar in Manhattan, passing it around. One friend was holding it when a cop slowly pulled up to us. I was the one closest to his window, and he waved me over and asks, "Why is your friend holding a bottle of cranberry juice?" It was pretty obvious it wasn't cranberry on a Friday night in the East Village. I said, "He's on his period." The cop laughed and made us dump it. My brother and I, both underage and both very drunk, were walking home with a dozen donuts and the remains of a 6-pack when the cops saw us mostly stumbling along the main road. They pulled around behind us and scared the pants off us with the siren. One cop got out of the car and asked us where we were going. We offered him our donuts. He took our beer. Joke was on him, it was Bud Light. They left us to continue on our way home. I don't think we'd get away with that today. You know that whole Dave Chappelle bit about, "I didn't know I couldn't do that"? Basically, that. I was speeding, although I didn't know I was speeding because there wasn't a sign for miles in a construction zone. The officer pulled me over and told me how, since it's a construction zone, the ticket could have been so much worse than a regular speeding ticket. I said, I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I know there's normally signage saying "men at work, slow down" or something of that nature, but 1, no signs giving me a speed limit, and 2, nobody working. As far as I was concerned, I was driving the normal speed limit, as I was unaware that it had dropped. I didn't know I couldn't do that, got me out of a $700 ticket because he let me off with a warning. I worked at the NCO club on an Air Force base as a teenager. I was a cook sometimes and a dishwasher. I blew through a stop sign and was speeding. Apparently I was being lit up and chased and didn't realize it until I saw the gate closing as I was trying to get off base. The security forces, AFMP, asked me a bunch of questions about it, and I told him I wasn't paying attention due to my eating the cheesy fries that I made sitting in the passenger seat. Then I asked, "Do you want some?" He stared at me for a second and told me to leave. Yelling at a cop for calling me Jack Sparrow instead of Captain Jack Sparrow, while heavily intoxicated and dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was 18, a friend of mine and I stepped out of a restaurant to have a cigarette. We were in the parking lot smoking when a cop pulls up. We weren't doing anything illegal, so we kept doing what we were doing. He walks up to us and asks what we're doing. We tell him, but he doesn't believe us because there were reports of cars getting broken into, which I doubt. He decides to search us. We should have resisted, but didn't know any better at the time. He pulls a brown paper bag out of my friend's pocket, and with a smirk on his face, he asks, "What am I gonna find in here?" My friend keeps a straight face and says, "It's the Emancipation Proclamation." To which the cop says, "Yeah, right." Turns out, it actually was a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation. He had been to the History Museum that day and got a tiny copy as a souvenir. The cop didn't say anything, just handed back the bag and got in his car. "Did you see the speed limit sign?" "Yes, sir, I just didn't see you sitting behind it." I'll never forget how hard he scrunched up his face, trying not to laugh. I was exiting the beer tent at a local summer festival. There were 2 county sheriffs guarding the entrance and exit at the time. Drunk me walks up to one and says, "To protect and serve, right?" And he replies, "Yes, sir." Again, drunk me says, "Well, you could serve me by protecting this beer. I'll be right back." And then I set the beer on the ground near his feet while I went to use the porta-john bathroom. I came back and my beer was still there, untouched. The officer did his job. Got pulled over for quickly accelerating after a traffic light. When the cop asked why, I said it was to try to get away from the butthole with their brights on. He turned to see he still had his brights on and said to have a safe drive home. Well, I'd say you really took a gamble there, and in this case it paid off. But given how many innocents we've seen get ticketed, I'd say you got lucky. When I was 20, I worked at a video store. This one night we had to do inventory, which we started at midnight, and I helped out until 3 a.m. But I was the opener, so I left. I was on my way home when I was pulled over. My tail light was out. I didn't know. The cop left me off with a warning, but it took 15 minutes for him to run my stuff. 2 miles down the same road, but in a different town, I was pulled over by a cop from that town. My tail light was out. I didn't know. The cop let me off with a warning, but it took almost 20 minutes to do so. 5 more miles down the road and yet another town over, I was pulled over again. It's now 4 a.m. My tail light is out. I didn't know. I'm let off with a warning. I make it home at 4:45 a.m. I have work at 9 a.m. I got to sleep. I woke up, skipping a much-needed shower, and left for work. I get pulled over about a mile away from my job. The officer said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "Yep, my tail light's out." The officer, "If you know why haven't you fixed it?" "Well, officer, I left work 6 hours ago. I was pulled over 3 times in an hour and a half, and each time I was told that my tail light was out. In the 4 hours since I got home, I went to bed and woke up to go back to work, and I haven't had time to fix it." The officer asked, 3 times? "Yep, so if you're going to give me the ticket, otherwise I'm assuming that you and your fellow officers just want me to be late to things." I was let off with a warning. In short, got pulled over 4 times in 5 hours and let off with warnings. Driving a 1990 Mercury Sable, dented and miscolored. Do you have any large denominations of US currency with you? Was it the flashy car that tipped you off? You were driving 20 miles below the speed limit. Yes. Why? A cop was following me. A party got busted when I was in college. A majority of the attendees were underage. The cocky campus policeman walked up and said, well, looks like we're going to be checking IDs and handing out underages tonight." Immediately after saying this, his 19-year-old daughter walked out. I was sitting on the porch and said, "You still want those IDs?" It was my first time getting pulled over. I asked for his autograph. I didn't even have my license yet. I was on a learner's permit, but I was late to school and my mum kept telling me to hurry. When I got pulled over, the cop told me I was doing 53 in a 35. I looked at him and said, "Dyslexia?" He was not amused, but he didn't give me any crap for being a smartass. Got pulled up for wearing headphones as a hands-free device. Apparently doing that is illegal in Pennsylvania. He said it was because then you can't hear sirens, so I replied, "Then why can deaf people get driver's licenses?" I tried to call the police to report a crime, but it wasn't an emergency. A guy was walking around my neighborhood, obviously casing houses. I called the police department after hours and couldn't get a hold of anyone. I passed a cop while driving and sped past him so that he'd pull me over. When he said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "Yeah, because I wanted you to so I could actually talk to an officer." He went and found the guy and arrested him because he had a warrant out on him. For suspected DUI, I wasn't drunk at all, after about 15 to 20 minutes of field sobriety tests. Do you know the difference between being intoxicated and being impaired? Do you know which one you are? One of them involves me having at least a blood alcohol content of 0.08 in the state of New York, and the other is a synonym you want me to admit so that you can take me in even though I passed all of your sobriety tests. There was a long pause. "You can go, but I'm blasting out your license plate number, and if someone else sees you so much as switch lanes without signaling, they'll book you." That guy was a freaking jerk. He had a big old 1980s mustache and aviator shades on. I asked if his nose came off with the stash and glasses. A buddy of mine is a cop and was at a concert doing security, as in he walked in uniform under the pretense of establishing a presence to dissuade unlawful activity. He really just wanted to see Metallica. Anyway, he's there and some guy lights up a doobie right next to him, turns, looks at him, and the exchange goes, "Ah, crap, a cop. Relax. Really, but this is tobacco. It's a hand-rolled tobacco cigarette. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Oh. Do you want some? Get the frick away from me." Not me, but my girlfriend. I was visiting her at her college town, and we were driving around to get some food. She starts to go down this road that's a one-way road, except she's doing the wrong way. And of course, as luck would have it, the car coming towards her is a cop. She's honking at him, not realizing she's the one going the wrong way. The cop puts his lights on and starts walking towards us. He goes through the motions, license, insurance, and stuff, and tells her why she's being pulled over and all that, and then she goes, "Oh, so this is why they pulled me over last time." My girlfriend is very chipper and happy-go-lucky, whatever you call it, so she's saying this with the biggest grin on her face. The cop stops for a second and stares at her and then at me with my "oh crap" look on my face. The cop stares at her and then goes, "And you didn't get a ticket last time," and she replies, again, full smile and chipper, "Nope, I guess cops just like me." He walks away, comes back, "Okay, well, be more careful next time." And so we went on our merry way, as I was confused to all heck. I guess cops really do just like her. That sounds like it was just a case of the cop literally not knowing how to react to the situation and just trying to wipe it away from his reality. Nice job. I was driving in Boston, headed to a Bruins game, and I missed the damn turn for the parking garage. I didn't see any cops, so I decided to make an illegal U-turn at the next light. Sure enough, lights go on behind me, and I get pulled over. The officer comes up to my window and hits me with a, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "Yeah, 'cause I'm a butthole." After a good laugh and a warning, he told me to go be a butthole on the other side of the city. I was riding my motorcycle away from the traffic lights at a speed allowed in the area. Admittedly, my engine just revved rather loud. The police officer said, "I've stopped you for speeding." I wasn't speeding. I could tell by the sound of your engine you were speeding. That's absurd. Are you trying to tell me you can tell what speed something is going by the noise? Yes. Okay. I pointed at a plane flying overhead. What speed's that going at then? No tickets, but he wasn't very amused. This wasn't so much smart-ass, but still awesome. I got pulled over by 2 cops, and it turns out there's been some burglaries in the area and they're out looking. They take a look at me and decide I can't be the person they're looking for, but one decides to have some small talk. While we're chatting away, this colleague casually circles my car with a torch. I start to tense up. I have 4 tires balder than Professor X, and if they spot them, they could take away my license on the spot. The searching cop comes back and pulls away the chatty one. Excusing himself, they walk around my car. They look at my tires. I see the chatty one shake his head. Coming back to my window, he says, "Miss..." He can see the look of horror on my face. He knows I'm screwed. "Have you had a look at your tires recently?" My face says it all. He regards me silently, then seems to come to a conclusion. He takes a deep breath and suddenly practically shouts, "Well, they're great tires. Perfect. So much tread left on them, it's insane. Possibly the best tires I've ever seen. Definitely wouldn't insist on going straight to a garage first thing in the morning and getting them all changed." I stared at him for a second, then caught on and replied in a tone equally as loud and deliberate, "Oh, thank you, officer. I promise that I certainly won't go straight to the garage and get 4 brand new ones tomorrow. Have a great evening. Thank you for your time." "You're welcome," he booms and gestures for me to leave. As I look in my mirrors driving away, I see the searching cop gesturing at the chatty one in confusion and annoyance, while my cop just shakes his head and smiles. Legend. I offered the officer a donut from the box on my front seat when he pulled me over due to a burned-out tail light. He took 2, gave me a warning to get it fixed ASAP, and left. What are some of your craziest near-death experiences? I'll explain. I work as a millwright for a company that manufactures automation equipment. Today I was working at a bench near the machine shop when my IT guy came in to install my new shop PC, a speedy little unit armed with a P4, 768 megs of RAM, and one hell of a heart. I know, you're jealous. I leave the bench to go and enter my password on the shiny, new piece of tech and have a few words with him about the sad state of affairs. No more than a minute and a half later, I hear a horrible sound of metal hitting something solid, and then what sounded like someone threw the biggest ninja star in the world across the shop. By the time I looked up, it was past us, and as I turned around, it struck and mangled a shelving unit against the far wall. I ran over to make sure the machinist was okay because he was working on the lathe, and I figured out that was where it came from. The lathe is a machine that can turn pieces of metal at over 1,000 rotations per minute. He was fine, but pretty shaken. Turns out the adjustable dead stop at the rear of the lathe came apart, no fault of his own, at a high speed and hit the floor and went merrily on its way. The dead stop is a 4-foot piece of 1.5-inch solid steel bar, not something to be messed with at 100 miles per hour. It was jammed about half an inch deep into reinforced concrete. The worst part was, I followed the path it took and it was directly over the top of the spot on the bench I was working at. I bought a lotto ticket and a big bottle of Jameson's when I got home. Tonight we drink, because we didn't get decapitated today. I was working at a normal boring office job and I needed to come in on a Saturday to get some work done. So I parked in the parking deck and got in the elevator to go down to the first floor. The elevator was sort of old and crappy and I'd seen people working on it on and off all week. I got in and everything went normally until I reached the first floor. As the elevator settles into place, I hear this loud metallic clanging from somewhere far above me, followed by a loud scraping noise that's obviously something sliding down the side of the shaft at freefall speed. During this, the door starts to open, and I'm gripped with indecision as to whether I should leap out of the elevator or take my chances where I am. I decide to run for it, but about half a second later my decision is made for me when a large steel panel, maybe about 4 by 6 feet, flashes guillotine-like through the space between the open elevator door and hits the bottom of the shaft with a thunderous crash. And then I step out of the elevator and the doors close like nothing has happened. And of course, it turned out the door I was trying to use was locked on the weekend, so I had to go back up to where I started from. I took the stairs. It turned out later that the guys doing the work had forgotten to refasten some sort of panel on some machinery. If I'd been half a second faster at deciding what I wanted to do, it would have cut me in half and nobody would have found me until Monday morning. In short, almost got cut in half due to crappy elevator maintenance. I kind of feel like this was your final destination near-death experience and that you should have been very careful going forward. Except, hold on, this post was 12 years ago. No more answers from the author on the story since then. Oh, thank God, he's writing on other things. He's fine, folks. He's fine. 2 weeks ago, I had some weird chest pains and decided to walk to the ER. It got worse as I went, but by then I was pretty close to the place, so I just kept going. I walked in the automatic door and within 4 seconds, I hit the floor. Heart attack. This was at 2:30 in the morning in this dinky little town. If the heart attack had hit me a minute sooner, I would have laid out on the sidewalk and died. They tell me that my heart stopped for 3 minutes. I don't think it would have started up again without the compressions and shock paddles and whatever else they did. If you're going to have a heart attack, I highly recommend having it right there in the ER. We had a loss of depth control on my submarine while in some heavy seas and in not-so-friendly territory. Sunk out very deep and had to use the emergency blow to regain control of depth. One of the dudes in sonar with me started to cry. It was some spooky stuff. Funny enough, the same thing happened to our boat on the east coast. We were somewhere where we weren't supposed to be, and the captain thought that since it was slow and nothing was going on, why not run some drills in prep for ORSA, Operational Safety Exams for the layman's, when we get back. We ran the loss of propulsion drill, and the nuclear engineers couldn't get it back up and running, and something broke. We sank out way past recommended depth, and we had to emergency blow to get back up, and we barely made it back to the surface before emptying the tanks. The sonar sup on watch lost it and had to be relieved. I was fire control technician on watch at the time, and nothing is worse than coming up to the surface and not knowing what's out there that could hit us. This happened just today, actually. I'm visiting my eldest brother for the week, and while he's at work today, I decide to go on a bike ride to see the neighborhood. I find his bike and take it and start going down the road. The roads are mostly flat, and I soon find myself going down a side road with lots of bushes and trees on both sides. Then the road starts to become a downwards incline. Not too steep, but steep enough where I'm gaining speed without pedaling. I'm going now at a decent pace and remember that it's an unknown road and I don't have a bike helmet on. I should slow down. The brakes don't seem to be working. Moving faster now. Down the hill getting steeper. Wait, what the heck? I've got no brakes. At this point in time, I'm really moving fast. I was pretty much going about as fast as someone that was biking all out under their own power on a flat piece of land could go. I look ahead to see if this hill has any plans to flatten out before something bad happens to me. This is a problem. The road ahead, about 25 meters away, takes a sharp turn left. I can't see past that turn, but I can see that it's a downward slope the entire way. I had a choice. Take the turn blind and hope that the road is safe and the hill flattens out, or do something right now to stop my bike before I get to the unknown turn ahead. I decide to do the latter and aimed for someone's bushes on the side of the road. About 5 seconds later, I slammed into the bushes, moving about, 20 miles per hour? It was a lot more painful than I thought it would be. I got the wind knocked out of me, and was covered with a dozen cuts or so, some of them bleeding through my clothes. As I limp over to drag my bike out of this yard, I get a chance to see what's around that blind corner. After the turn, there was about 10 feet of street and then a stop sign. It then crossed a 4-lane frontage road that was full of cars moving in either direction at high speeds. If I didn't decide to crash into the bushes, I would have taken the turn and found myself moving 20 miles per hour right across 4 lanes of busy traffic. In short, 6 hours ago I made a split-second decision which ended up saving me from slamming into traffic on a bike. I was urban exploring at an abandoned jail during my high school years. We were on the 3rd floor of a building and there was a catwalk that was behind and between the cells, which we decided to explore. Below us was a drop of about 40 to 50 feet to a bunch of mangled metal and concrete in the basement. As I was walking on the catwalk, it rotted off the boards and began to fall downwards. My friend was behind me, luckily, and grabbed me by my hoodie while jumping on the seesawing catwalk. I still owe him to this day, because I'm sure I would have been impaled on something had the fall not killed me. Needless to say, my stupidity would have killed me. I make plastic injection mold, which produce plastic parts for the automotive industry. When two halves are together, they can get pretty huge when making things like the inside door panels or truck grills and whatnot. Anyway, I was once operating an overhead crane trying to separate two halves of the mold, each half being about 10,000 pounds. I was leaning in close because when separating these, the top tends to get cocked, and you need to adjust the position of the crane in small increments to get the weight to come off just right. I was constantly needing to adjust in one direction, which after about 5 seconds started raising some red flags in my head, since that's a pretty extreme adjustment. I looked up and someone was operating the other overhead crane and without knowing it was pushing mine out of position. In the span of time it took me to yell, "Hey, frick, stop!" My crane had been pushed far enough that my load basically sprung off the steel horses and shot towards me. I got super lucky, and the load ended up balanced on the single horse. A few inches either way and it would have fallen off and I might not be here today. It was a pretty scary day. That's a smoke break, right? That's a finish setting down that load and go for a drag outside while exercising a 1,000-yard stare kind of incident at work. No, I don't smoke, but I think I might if that happened. I climb towers in the US, cell phone towers more specifically. As a climber, we're equipped with various safety devices. For climbing a tower, we have a safety climb, which attaches to a metal wire running the length of the ladder. For free climbing, outside of the ladder, we have two pelican hooks, or PFAs, personal fall arrest systems, which are basically two huge carabiners hooked onto a fabric lanyard that's attached to our climbing belt. On top of all of this, we have a number of adjustable lanyards, pelican hooks, and carabiners to make working as safe and smooth as possible. One day, in particular, I was working on a tower in California, roughly 350 feet tall, give or take. Anyone who's been mountain climbing in California knows that it can get windy. Where are the most cell sites located? On mountaintops. Better reception, more range, but not fun to work on when bad weather rolls in. This was one of those days where the weather chose to work against us. We arrived, and as soon as the truck door was flung open wildly by the wind, we knew the day was going to be horrible. There's not much you can do aside from put on all the layers of clothing you have and hope it's enough. I suit up, throw my belt on, and stand at the bottom of the ladder, looking up for a moment and listening to the wind howl as it passes through the various tubes and slots of metal situated on the tower. It's a haunting sound. So we climb the tower, and about 3 hours into work, I move to work on a new antenna. I do the usual, double-check all of my connections and slowly put my weight on said connections so that I can let go of the tower and use my hands to work if I have to. No problem. I sit there working, shifting my weight, occasionally just doing the job. The wind is pulling the tears from my eyes, and my windbreaker hoodie has been flapping like a hummingbird wing in my ears for the entire day. One little shift of my weight and the world drops out from under me. My foot slips. I grab the tower, but I'm falling. I've never fallen so slow. I could clearly see a handhold coming up and remember having the time to consciously think, I can grab this, before my hips slammed into it and my body slid over the side of the metal. I was caught by my armpit. As traumatic as it was, I don't remember much after catching myself. I sat there stunned for a minute and looked up to where I was working. I would guess that I fell roughly 15 to 20 feet. I saw the crossbeam that I was tied off to bent slightly, and when I climbed back to finish the job, I noticed that the nut on the bolt holding the piece in was missing. I'm guessing it de-threaded over time, or maybe it was never there to begin with. More than anything, I remember just being embarrassed. I never told my co-workers. In short, a faulty bolt connection almost killed me on a cell tower. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I almost drowned in a canoe when I was 9. I was under the water for about 30 seconds before my cousin's boyfriend, now husband, pulled me out. I had Kawasaki syndrome when I was 2, and none of the doctors knew what it was, but one random newly graduated med student came in and diagnosed it right away. I don't know who it was, but he saved my life. My brother came extremely close to death. He was 3 and I was 5. We were at our neighbors playing. I was at their pond with my friend and her mum, and my brother was riding a tricycle in the driveway. Their grandpa was a truck driver and had the cab of his truck on the driveway. All of a sudden, I hear my friend's mum screaming and running towards the truck. She's waving her hands and yelling, "Stop!" over and over again. My brother was riding the trike in front of the truck and Grandpa didn't see him. He started it and knocked my brother off the trike and underneath the truck. The grandpa saw the mum and stopped. My brother had hit his head on something underneath the truck and had tire marks on his head and arm where the tires brushed up against him. If the grandpa hadn't stopped exactly when he did, my brother would have been run over. The grandpa stopped driving trucks after this happened because he felt so bad. He had to change his career after that? That's a profound change. I know the majority of our parents didn't give up driving after the many, many times that their kids got in front of the family sedans on our tricycles and skateboards. I'm a manufacturing manager in Texas. I've seen a machinist working on an automated lathe with his shirt untucked. The lathe malfunctioned and started operating when he was working on it, and caught his shirt. He was pulled up and over for about 20 times until someone could shut it off. He can't walk anymore. When I was about 4, I was waiting in the line to jump into the ocean off a dock in Jakarta, when a little rude French boy jumped into the water right as I was supposed to. He ended up jumping on a man-of-war jellyfish and nearly died. If that had been me, I was so little I would have died. During officer training in the German army, my class and I received training on our assigned weapon systems. I'm with Armored Recon, so mine is, or was, since it's been phased out a few years ago, an 8-wheeled reconnaissance tank with a 20mm machine cannon for self-defense. This is some serious hardware, dealing out 20mm high-explosive rounds with a kill radius of 6 meters at 1,000 rounds per minute. They're pin-fired and the primer needs about 70 newtons, that's 70 kilograms of force, to ignite the charge. That will become important later on. So I'm tasked with loading the gun for some live firing as fast as possible, since we're already behind schedule. Now, the ammo comes in 25-round belts, which have to be linked and fed into the storage compartment inside the turret. This process is done by one person sitting inside. There are special tools to pull out single rounds, overlap 2 links and connect the 2 belts with the spare round. These have to be used for safety reasons. I, being young and dumb but ambitious, of course choose to ignore all safety precautions because it's faster that way. The high-explosive storage compartment is at about knee level in front of me and holds about 300 rounds. I'm trying to link the final belt to the snake-like chain of death half a meter away from my crotch, but the round I have to pull out is stuck in the link. I apply all my strength, but this is stuck, man. For a second, I contemplate using the special pair of pliers designed exactly for this task. Nah. I pull again with the belt against my shins, pulling the round towards me for maximum leverage. It suddenly comes free. Unable to stop the motion because of the surprise, my hand and ammo combo move between my legs at the speed of sound. No, it didn't hit my Johnson, but the base of the round, where the primer is, struck the edge of the steel storage container under the seat I was occupying, with the loudest frickin' clang I have ever heard. I pause. Silence. 5 seconds pass. 10 seconds pass. A bead of sweat rolls down my chin. I finally managed to move my arm again. I look at the base of the round. Around 2 millimeters, that's 1/10 of an inch, next to the primer, is a huge fricking dent, twice that deep. What I'm trying to say is, a bit more to the left and that thing would have gone off in my hand, sending shrapnel and burning powder right into the ammo storage, where 299 rounds of live 20mm high-explosive ammo was sitting. That, combined with the 500 liters of diesel fuel in the tank, would have provided quite a spectacular fireworks display. I presume, anyway. Maybe they would have found my teeth. Terribly sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but your son is dead because he was a freaking moron. There are more instances where I almost died, getting shot, squashed, or decapitated during training, but this one was the one with the most profound impact on me. In short, almost blew myself, 300 rounds of 20mm ammo, and a recon tank up due to stupidity. And that, sweet viewers, is why the narrator isn't in any of the armed forces. I wouldn't even make it to contact with the enemy, because something like this would have happened the first time I was allowed near anything more dangerous than a wooden practice rifle. Several years back, I worked as an electrician's apprentice. We were rewiring an industrial printing press. If you haven't seen one, those things are massive. This one was 30 feet tall and about 200 feet long. On this particular day, we had to rewire a portion of the master control unit. This involved pulling out like 300 feet of wire and then rerunning it. The guy who I apprenticed under told me that the power had been locked out of that side of the press. This is for safety because you can't have people working around live wires that run industrial currents. This is where my whole day started to turn to crap. Being an apprentice, I said, okay, and trusted him. Note to self, never trust someone again when your life is on the line. So here I am on top of the printing press pulling this wire out. They run the wires in a gutter-like thing to keep all of the wiring neat and out of the way. The gutter was run over the press and then down to the master control unit. So I'm pulling the wire and having a pretty good day so far. Then the wire gets stuck on something. Okay, I'll just put some oomph into it. It didn't budge. Now, let me clarify exactly where I am right now. The press is 30 feet high, and it has a catwalk around the top of it to access certain parts of it for service. The catwalk has a standard metal handrail, so people don't fall off it. I, being the naturally smart person that I am, have one foot on top of the press, and the other foot is on the handrail. I'm standing precariously on these about 30 to 35 feet in the air, and I'm reaching up to this metal gutter and pulling wires that are stuck. Well, damn, this sucks. A light bulb goes off in my head. Screw it, I'll just cut it and pull this half out right here. And this is where the defecation hits the ventilation. So it turns out the guy I apprenticed under was either A, incompetent, or B, a jerk of mythic proportions. So here I am, precariously balanced, and I cut the wire. I can only describe what happened next as a dream. Time literally slowed down like in a movie. Slow motion, zzzz. I can feel my body buzzing from the shock, yet I don't actually feel pain. The next thing I know, I'm looking at the sky. It's so pretty. I see the clouds, weird but pretty. I stare at the sky for a few minutes. Then it turns into the Far Side comic of Custard's Last Sight. Basically, I see a circle of heads all around me and people look scared. Well, that's kinda weird. I sit up and let me tell you, I felt frickin' great. So full of energy. No pun intended. I've never felt better. Everyone is slack-jawed and staring, and no one says anything. After a few minutes, I look up at the top of the press where I was. Something tickles my memory. Why is that familiar? Slowly it dawns on me that I was doing something up there recently. Another minute passes and it all becomes clear. The buzzing, the body shaking, the sky. I look down and my hands are all bloody, and so is my leg. Finally, one of the guys says, "Holy frick, dude." Yes, my good man, holy frick indeed. It turns out that after getting hit with 480 volts, I fell backwards 30 feet, bounced off a 6-foot steel cabinet, landed on my head, and flopped onto my back. I'm bleeding from where the electricity went in and from where it shot out, as well as several cuts from the cabinet. The ambulance arrives, I go to the hospital, only the few minor cuts, no real damage. Doctors and paramedics couldn't believe I wasn't dead from the electricity or the fall. Good times. In short, got electrocuted, fell 35 feet onto my head, and walked away with only a few minor cuts. How do adult children of helicopter parents deal with them later in life? My dad was never a helicopter parent. He was actually the complete opposite. My mum was a super helicopter parent. When I was a sophomore in high school, I got grounded from everything. I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. I had to go to school and come home. I couldn't watch TV unless it was about God. I didn't have a phone or a computer and couldn't listen to music. For months. It got worse and worse as time went on. She'd give me a curfew randomly one day and it would be different the next day. I'd get in trouble for not following a curfew I had no idea existed. She gaslit me so much that I often felt like I deserved what was happening to me. After going to therapy, I'm better able to identify between her more mean-spirited and bipolar tendencies. I'm working on minimizing contact with her, so whenever she's being a pain in my butt, I just tell her to F off. Mine say things and I just kind of go, like I'm agreeing that I'll do those things, but I never verbally say that I'll do those things. Same. It's easier to lie and agree than to tell the truth and spend the next half hour listening to a monologue. I still live with my parents. I avoid their invasive questions, but I'm pretty honest about everything I do choose to share with them. My siblings and I are whole adults, so they try to be less insane these days. Funny story though, the other day my sister and I were watching Pulp Fiction, and my dad waltzed into our room, stared at the TV for a second and goes, "That movie is for grown-ups." My sister said, "I'm 25. They still helicopter me, actually more than ever now that I'm 24, and I'm not sure what suddenly turned the dial up. However, I'm finally planning on moving out for good this year with my boyfriend. Every time I bring it up, they don't believe me, or they think I'm kidding and say it isn't happening. Oh well, I did tell them. I guess they'll get a reality check when the time comes, and it won't be on me. I just say no when I'm told to do something or follow a rule. I don't give a reason even when I'm asked why. It's so satisfying. I don't. That's how I deal with my parents later in life. I don't do it. I'm not no contact with them, but I'm absolutely firm on my boundaries and standing up for myself, and I don't let their tantrums sway me. On the other hand, the pressure does eat at me, but I'll never let them know that. This video is an odd and mostly positive sequel from one of our previous videos, What's the worst case of helicopter parents that you've ever seen? Feel free to check it out if you'd like to know more about what these adults are rebelling against. My parents weren't, but a friend moved to a different state and got engaged, and his mum still managed to be a helicopter parent, visiting at least 3 times a month and contacting either her or her significant other constantly. It ruined the engagement because the significant other finally had enough, because even though my friend was annoyed with her mum as well, she couldn't cut her mum off completely. I don't know all the details, but it must have been super annoying if someone was like, I love you, but F having in-laws like this. She's now single and has moved back home. It's unfortunate. Honestly, me and my husband are trying to figure this out. My mother-in-law is a total helicopter parent. If one of us, me or my husband or his brother, doesn't respond to her messages within an hour or two, she'll bombard the other two about where we are or if something happened to us. She freaked out on me when I didn't respond to her after 3 hours. We were doing a cross-country drive, and she accused me of trying to shut her out and said we're never going to be a real family because of the walls that I've built up around myself. I don't know what to do. My husband won't stand up to her as much as I want him to, but I can't do this for the rest of my life. We have to establish some boundaries. But it's not my mum, so I can't be the one to initiate it. Well, yeah, he's obviously so used to it that he doesn't actually understand how damaging this is. I know of a few marriages that dissolved because of one helicopter parent. It's only going to get worse if you ever have children. They'll become helicopter grandparents, and that's even more stifling. They'll tell you exactly how to raise your own children and get angry when you don't take their overflowing advice. If he won't put his foot down and he gets mad at you for putting your foot down, then it's not going to last, and if it does, it won't be happy. I have a friend whose mother-in-law would just show up unannounced and expect to be welcomed in, asked for a key when they started pretending they weren't home, then eventually kept suggesting that they should move to her neighborhood to be closer as a family. The wife wanted to move across the country just to avoid this woman, and her mama's boy husband was aghast at this idea. They ended up divorcing. By the way, after posting this story, my inbox blew up with angry helicopter parents telling me to go F myself. I must have struck a nerve. It's funny to me that "it's family" is used to justify all sorts of awful behavior that you'd never rationalize if it wasn't coming from someone who created you. The person I was replying to was obviously upset with the situation they're in, and I've seen a number of similar situations play out in my life. Hence the advice. I'm low contact. A lot of us go low or no contact. My older brother and I moved out as soon as we turned 18. He moved to the opposite side of the country and I moved 3 states away. He still keeps low contact and is still on the East Coast. I came back home when I became homeless at 25 and noticed that while we were gone, my mother, the helicopter, had done a lot of soul-searching and realized that her controlling nature pushed her kids away. She's been in Codependence Anonymous for almost 8 years now. And I'm happy to say for the first time in my life, I enjoy spending time with my mum. It took a bit, but I was able to transition out of low contact. I had no idea they had recovery groups for codependent people. I'm glad to see your mother was able to progress and have improvements for herself. CODA is fantastic for domestic victims, as well as obsessive helicopter parents or anyone with codependency problems. I ignore them. To be honest, it's also because I'm in a different city and have a hectic job. But there was also a period of slowly getting them used to the fact that they would not know and control every detail of my adult life. I don't know if I'd say I'm an adult because I'm 19 and still in college, and does that really count? But yeah, I just ignore them. They say, do this, and I say, okay, and then I do whatever the frick I want. They've got to drive 13 hours to get to me. I can't see them paying for a plane flight. What are they going to do, call me? I can just not answer it. They said, share your location with us, and I said, no, and it was amazing. They said, give me your password so we can check your grades, and I was like, nope, I can't, it's location-based, whoops, sorry, it's not. They say, don't go out, and I just tell them I'm not going to frat parties. Meanwhile, I'm going like 3 hours away for 2 nights for a weekend trip with a whole damn frat. I tell them I wake up at 9 every day and go to sleep at 11:30 and that I eat 3 times a day. I have 4 friends that they trust that I always say that I'm hanging out with. I have a separate Insta account that they can follow so they don't see what I'm doing. I pay for my own subscriptions so they can't see what I have. I have my own credit card so they can't police what I buy, and I don't tell them when it's time to register for classes so they can't tell me what to sign up for. I made that mistake last semester. I don't tell them what finals I have when so they can't police my studying every hour. I've got 4 cream sodas in my fridge right now. My mum would flip if she found out that I drank soda. Huh. So basically, ignore them and hide things, I guess. Probably not the best habits, but you know what? I'm enjoying being able to step outside for a moment without being asked, "Where are you going?" Or being able to talk about someone I sit next to without being asked about their family or grades. Went for a walk on campus at 6 yesterday, on my own, and no one yelled at me for it. And look, they're not cut off. I still communicate with them, but I just hide a lot, so they think my college existence is the exact same as my high school existence. And I also don't answer every single call or text from them immediately. But I call home and say hi on weekends and keep them somewhat updated on what I'm doing. And no, I'm not fully financially independent yet. I'm working on it. I'm paying for half of college. I'm high-key too scared to try and discuss boundaries while they can still hold half of my tuition over my head. Although the last author's gripes about their parents are very much valid, I know that in my previously referenced video on them, I believe a number of said parental figures insisted on breaking into their children's universities and even job interviews, so you should consider yourself lucky in that respect at least. I had to be extremely mean and blunt with my mum. I'm a mid-30s man and had to straight up tell her that I have a family and my own life, and she needs to go and get a hobby or take classes or anything whatsoever that will give her a sense of value because I don't need a gosh darn interfering invasive mother any longer. When she started giving me the, "That's so horrible that you talk to your mother that way," or the, "Oh no, my kids don't need me anymore," I literally flat out had to just say, "I don't give a crap, Mum. Go work it out." I had to be super mean to her about it. Sometimes parents have to cut their children off, and sometimes children have to cut their parents off. It doesn't make me feel good, but I sleep fine. I feel ya. I moved back in with my parents in November. I'm 26, and when I moved back in, I explained to my mum that I usually go and hang out with my friends 2 to 3 times per week, and I enjoy being out of the house a lot. Still, when I come back home, I get several questions about where I was and who I was with, what I was doing, etc. It drives me insane, and I have to straight up tell her to stop questioning me. I feel bad about being so short with her, but I don't have much privacy there. My parents weren't that bad, but they were quite overprotective. After I turned 21, I still wasn't allowed out after dark and all that jazz. Had to let them know where I was going and who I was seeing in case I was murdered. What I did was move to another continent. I talk to them every couple of weeks over WhatsApp voice chat. They try and tell me what to do sometimes, and I'm just like, okay, and I don't do it. I'm white British and moved to the US when I was 24. Last I checked with them, my parents had agreed that my mum is no longer allowed out in the front garden without my dad, quote, because of all the blacks moving in. Just in case you wanted any confirmation on their sanity. The way that I got my mum to chill out on me was to tell her that I wanted to go to college out of state. That was the moment she realized she wasn't going to be protective of me forever, and it took her a long time to accept it. As of now, she's been a little easier on me, although she still sometimes treats me like a child. If I'm out of state, then I just limit contact with her and don't call home often. I think a lack of contact is the best everyone with helicopter parents can do initially, because it's just so refreshing to be by yourself with nobody breathing on your neck after so long. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My brother and I had no free time allowed growing up, just music and homework allowed. Now we're both over 30, my dad has passed away now, and he was never the problem to be honest. But my mum still does her best to control our lives, inserting herself into situations she doesn't belong in, and passively-aggressively putting us in situations that she wants to happen. But cutting her off or telling her she's overstepping makes us the bad ones in her mind, so minimal contact and details are all that's left on the menu for her for now. My brother doesn't get it though and gives her the minute details of his life and then gets annoyed when she thinks she can have a say in how he lives his life. Limiting contact with my mother has worked for me as well. When I was in middle school, my friends asked if I wanted to join them, and I always had to stay home because of her migraine, etc. Because my parents are divorced, I moved in with my father and then later moved out of town. Somewhat cutting contact made her worry, and she stays on the phone for hours if I don't stop her when we talk, but it did get a lot better. My husband deals with this with his mother. We make decisions as a married couple, and then later everything changes after they talk to each other. Even situations dealing with our daughter, like I have no say even when he and I were on the same page before decisions were put into action. He's so desperate to please his mum that he turns his back on me. When I confront him, he blames me for causing drama or being petty. I don't know, his mum acts like she's his wife and he lets it happen. It grosses me out. I'm sorry to tell you, but this will get worse and you might only get your husband to listen to you if you persist on doing couples counseling. His behavior is putting your relationship in danger and he might need a good smack from someone else to see his wrongdoings. Don't let him step over you. Set firm boundaries with your mother-in-law and him now. Tell him to grow a spine. Do it for your child. Both of my parents have problems with setting boundaries with their parents, and it's unbearable. Stay strong and maybe visit the No Mill subreddit. My parents track my location at all times now. I'm 27. That way, they don't call the cops if I don't pick up within 30 minutes, which has happened multiple times. I once fell asleep on the couch and my parents couldn't get hold of me for an hour. They concluded that I hit my head in the shower and died. My parents are immigrants and only have me, so I'm not sure if that has to do with their anxiety. Stone-cold boundaries and a residence more than 1,000 miles away. This seems to be a brief summary of the majority of people's solutions to the problem. The other seems to be therapy, which to an extent requires some willingness from the parents to be open about the fact that they have a problem. And let's be honest, that might not be the case for everyone. You've got to rip that band-aid off, and it will suck. But it's better than letting this continue. I have some experience with this from rescuing both my wife and her siblings from their mother and immigrant community. It was a rescue that took years. It sucked. It still sucks sometimes. Cops, ethnic gang shenanigans, kidnapping, people with deadly weapons and attempted murder. All of that fricking happened. The only reason certain people aren't in jail is my wife forbade me from ensuring it. They're family. The advice below comes from that experience and it may not apply to all of you. I hope almost none of it does. You have to have a plan before every interaction. You'll need those plans until independence becomes a part of you. This can take years and you will probably feel like you're a horrible person for doing it. My wife still sometimes feels like the worst daughter in the world. You're not the worst. They're the worst. You deserve to be free. If you struggle with the guilt, see a therapist. They really help. If your therapist doesn't help, then get a new therapist. Every plan must have the following things in it. 1. You have a goal and stick with it. There's going to be a lot of things you want to change. And you can't change everything on day one. Keep it simple and don't bend your goal. Don't accommodate them with any amendments. All of that is just a slippery slope right the frick back into their controlling hands. 2. Be ready to walk away. This means you shouldn't argue. You're not making a request, you're telling them how it is now. After they reject it, and they will, don't argue. Just walk away or hang up. If arguing could change anything, things would already be different for you. You can't control them, and that's actually a good, healthy thing. You need to be clear that they can't control you either. Arguing tells them that they have a chance. 3. Have a prepared consequence like, if they cause trouble, I'm just going to hang up and block their number for a couple of weeks. And 4. Expect it to go horribly. It just will. Their reactions will almost certainly be a messed up control freak version of the stages of grief. They will rage and they will scream. Expect this. They'll try to guilt trick you into giving them back their control. Expect this. Follow your plan. You'll have to tell the cops to ignore them when they call about you. Expect this. Other people associated with your family might try to talk to you about the latest conflict. Expect their betrayal. Don't hate them. They're trapped in the same cultural bullcrap. Just don't assume they're on your side. If you can, do not meet them in person. They have to earn it by respecting your boundaries. The first meetings will almost certainly be manipulative, sneaky, or a guilt trip plot. Expect this and remember rule number 2, walk away. Meetings may always be this way. You may want early meetings in a public place like a restaurant. If they come from a culture that does honor killing, you must consider the possibility that any attempt to meet or any sudden contact from another relative or immigrant friend of the family is actually a murder or kidnap or acid plan. And this isn't racist bullcrap, I've lived through this stuff. If you fall for it and actually go, protect yourself. Don't go alone, take a friend or two. My wife made the mistake of doing visits without me and horrible stuff happened every time. Don't repeat her mistakes. Make sure that people know where you are and that the people you're visiting know that other people know. If you're a female, this is even more important. Certain immigrant cultures see female children as family property. Your misbehavior is an embarrassment to the whole family and shames them in the community. Shame can turn to murder rage real frickin' quick. or it can simmer for months, and a carefully crafted lie will lead you to a horrific end. Be paranoid, stay safe, and finally, no matter how many years have gone by, you can't visit the country they're from with them, ever. Over there, they can beat you all they want and have family and friends and culture crap to call upon to control you. This is real stuff that happens. Tricking uppity family into a visit home for a little correction is a very real thing to them. You can visit the old country, just not with them. And any visits with family over there need to be considered very carefully. The best thing to do is treat a visit like an actual vacation. Go to all of the popular vacation destinations and meet family for food somewhere once or twice, and then be on your way. Well, that was a very extreme guide on how to deal with a very specific sort of helicopter parent. Along with a few other complicated cultural factors, it seems like a very stressful and time-consuming process to break someone out of this situation. I hope you and your wife and her family have found a semblance of balance and happiness. Unfortunately, the helicopter behavior continued after I got married and had children. Eventually, the only way to gain control was to go no contact. Fundamentally, it boiled down to a complete lack of respect for boundaries. My happiness, marriage, and ability to be a good parent were all suffering because my mother was still trying to control my life. We tried setting up boundaries, but that only escalated things. I would have gladly gone to family counseling if she had agreed, but it was far easier for her to complain to her friends that her children don't speak to her. And yes, my brother cut her off too. I strongly recommend the following books: Stop Walking on Eggshells by Paul Mason and Boundaries by Henry Cloud. I also very strongly recommend counseling. 1. I moved to a different country. 2. I don't go back to visit. 3. When they come visit, they stay in a hotel. And 4. My husband, who was not raised in an overbearing environment, is always present when they visit. He serves as a reality check and is effective in shutting down misbehavior. And 5. I'm going to have to explain one day that they won't be allowed unsupervised visits with any children that I have. I ended up having to remove my parents from my life, and at first it was really hard. But seriously, they've controlled every aspect of it. When I was a kid, my internet time was limited and supervised. I was allowed like an hour a day on electronics. I wasn't allowed to play any violent video games. I really only played Mario Kart. I wasn't allowed to play Pokemon because it had evolution in it. I wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter because it was magic, and magic is bad. They decided which college I went to when I was 18. They decided which degree I got. When I was struggling to find work, they pushed me to go into a field I didn't want to go to, which I'm now stuck in. When I was sick as well, it was really rare that I went to the doctor. At one point, I was dying from a bad case of pneumonia, and they refused to hospitalize me, even though I was almost dead. Quite literally. My lungs were full of fluid and my oxygen level was running at 82%. Even on oxygen, that number didn't go up. Once I moved out of my house, I started to talk to them less until last year I finally just decided to cut them off. Talking to them gave me anxiety and they always tried to steer my life in a different direction, so I figured it was better to cut them out completely. At first it was hard, but it's gotten easier over time. My mother made my bank accounts, insurances, and even my mobile phone contract when I was underage, and she just kept them. I also think she stole money from me, but that's a different story. She said I wasn't able to manage this kind of stuff by myself. With the help of my significant other, I took everything back from her when I was 26. When I visited her, she tried to pressure me into stuff again, so I threatened her that I would pack up my stuff and leave immediately, and that she would never see me or talk to me ever again in her life. Those two things were kind of wake-up calls for her. Now she's so afraid that I could really go no contact that she keeps her stupid mouth shut. What did you do that immediately got you kicked out of a job? After graduating from grad school, I was having trouble finding jobs in my chosen career. I'd ended up applying to retail jobs just to get an income. I got hired at Old Navy. I went through training and even had 1 to 2 shifts. Then I got hired in my chosen career. Great! I went and told one of my managers, who was totally cool with it and understood, and even said I might be able to stay on part-time and help out during the holidays. Cool! Next shift, I have to tell the other manager that I got a new job. I just clocked in to start work, told this manager, and she tells me I can leave. I clock back out. I wasn't even allowed to work that shift. I barely knew her, but just from the short interactions I had with her, she seemed like a total jerk. I was 21. My first real full-time job was as an apprentice in an aircraft instrument repair shop. It was a small shop, just the owner, a bookkeeper, and myself. I loved it and was really enjoying working with my hands and being around the aircraft all the time. Just as we were closing up one day, the owner got a call. A customer needed an instrument. Did we have it, and could we send it right away? We did have it, and since it was closing time, the owner told me to box up the part and label it. While I was doing that, he wrote a check to UPS and left the amount blank. He gave me the check and told me it was very important that the part get to UPS on time and to fill in the amount when I sent it. He also told me to be sure and bring back the receipt. The owner left me to lock up and take the package to UPS on the way home. I finished boxing up the part, locked up the shop. Yes, he trusted me with the key, and I took the package to the UPS. When I went to the counter, the guy weighed the package, printed out a ticket, which he stuck on the box, and then pitched the box onto the belt. I watched the package disappear down the conveyor and reached into my pocket for the check the owner had given me. When I looked at the check, I realized that he'd put the date and made the check payable to the UPS, left the amount blank, but had also failed to sign the check. I didn't have enough cash on me to pay for the shipping. The box had already gone down the belt. The owner had stressed that this was a good customer and the part had to get there the next day. The check was already filled out to UPS, so I went ahead and wrote in the amount, $4.12. This was in 1977. I signed my boss's name on the check and handed it over to the guy behind the counter. He took the check. The package made it to the customer. The next day when I arrived at work, I immediately told my boss, the owner, what had happened. He fired me on the spot for signing his name to the check and watched me while I packed up my tools and left. One of my first jobs was working for this bucket telesales operation. We were selling long-distance plans, and they would change the fee structure and resell the same plan under a different name to the same customers. I went 1 week top of the sales chart, got a weekly bonus, and next week I was in the bottom numbers. This was the second or third week out of the training program as well. Ranking came out and they pulled me into the office and canned me for poor performance. I always thought it was because I walked in on them pulling names and numbers from different state phone books. They didn't have my final check ready that day. Next Monday, when I called in to make sure they had it, someone I didn't recognize answered but told me to come down for my check. It turns out they got raided for that whole scammy plan bit. I had a brief interview with an FBI agent and they handed me my final check and the place got closed down. Apparently, I missed out on a whole crazy entry scene when the feds came in the front and the back to grab the management team. I think you missed one of the more satisfying things it's possible to witness in life, and one that we all wish we could see. Seeing a crappy boss get cuffed and pushed out of the building into a waiting armored truck. The rest of us have to settle for dreaming that about our high school fast food jobs. I got fired from Borders because the person that was covering for me while I was on vacation got fired. What's even more messed up, I didn't even find out directly from them. Jose's girlfriend, she also worked there, texted me saying, "Hey, Jose got fired and you should probably call them because they've been expecting you." I called and the store manager was like, "Yeah, you're terminated. You can come in and pick up your last check." I didn't even bother arguing because I was going to give my 2 weeks notice when I got back anyway, because I was sick of their bullcrap. Joke's on them, they went out of business. As a backpacker in Australia around 2005 or 2006, I got a job working for a motivational speaker and life coach who was also a predatory fraudster. Basically, people would come to his free session on a Saturday and then, if they were interested, they'd leave their number for people like me to call them back and try to sell the paid weekend to them. Our script included things like how to advise people who said they couldn't afford it on how they could use their social welfare payments to pay for it. Really scummy. Anyway, on one call, a guy straight up asks me if this fellow was a fraud. And I said, "Between you and me, I think he is." Just as the supervisor walked past, she tapped me on the shoulder and whispered, "Make your last call," hung up and left. Really wish I could remember his name. Michael something. Scumbag. And we were in the main dressing room all week, but had to leave on the weekend because Alice Cooper was playing and needed the dressing room. We were moved to the hospitality suite near the stage, so we were trying to sell this bullcrap course with Alice Cooper blasting out in the background. Worked in a stockroom of a large, cheap clothing company. I was around 15 or 16. It was the most boring, mind-killing job involving moving boxes, unpacking boxes, unloading trucks, packaging boxes, and more boxes. It was mostly teenagers working to earn some pocket money. You try to make the shift go faster. I brought my MP3 player one day so I could listen to some music through headphones, but that wasn't allowed. So the intercom radio kept playing the same songs over and over. I think it was Scissor Sisters, I Don't Feel Like Dancing, and James Morrison, You Give Me Something. Anyways, one early Saturday morning shift I was working with a colleague my age. We had to unpack a load of carts with boxes. You know how kids are, we started messing around. throwing the boxes to each other like volleyballs, a manager came by and sent us to his office. We were told to leave and to not come back. That was actually a good day. I worked there for 3 months and I hated every second of it. Operations manager here. On the day of the Christmas dinner for the company, I texted one of the new employees who didn't show up at the restaurant we were having dinner at. This employee was with us for 2 months and was hired even after having bad reviews from previous employers, but still thought I'd give him a chance because we were in a pinch. His previous employer said he had issues getting to work or getting to work on time. He had no driver's license, so I asked one of the other employees with the company vehicle to pick him up in the morning, and sometimes he literally had to be woken up. Circling back to the day of the Christmas dinner, he replied saying that he'll need roughly a 38% raise from his current salary, otherwise he's quitting, because this other company offered him a job. I thanked him for his time with us and enjoyed the rest of my evening. A couple of months later, he called begging for his job back, and you all know what my answer was. One year, I was working at a summer camp. It was my first year, but a bunch of people had been going for years. This year, it was a brand new director, and she was useless, regularly telling us she was too busy to do her job. Often told us that if she did the hiring, she would have gotten better employees. Told people that we can't get mad at kids and needed to use positive reinforcement. Then, when they got in trouble, just took them away and did nothing. Completely useless woman. There was one incident the day before this where one kid got 3 fingers like claws and scratched another while transitioning to the afternoon care, when the day staff were supposed to go to the office and plan activities for the next day. We were all inside when this happened, and so was the director who was actually supposed to be helping outside. Our director and regional manager came out the next day and gave written warnings to a bunch of people for being inside during our planning time. One of the 4 guys working at our camp, 37 employees and 4 were male, including me, stood up and said it was crap that we got written warnings for doing what we were told during training. But they didn't care, they wanted a scapegoat. He got angry and got fired on the spot for speaking up against our director, who was fired 3 weeks later for sucking at her job. In high school, my friend, whose nickname was the most common term for green herb we know, was scratching his package with his hand down the inside of his pants while flipping burgers at McDonald's. The owner stepped around the corner, saw him, and fired him in seconds. Are you telling me that's all it would have taken for me to get out of my fast food jobs? Oh, who am I kidding? That small-town food court restaurant would have had to actually catch me biblically desecrating the food before they'd go through the effort of finding a new staff member. Not me, but I witnessed it. Guy not only fired, but they had cops on site to escort him out. He was let go for a multitude of reasons. 1. Clocked in via phone, proceeds to show up 1 hour after his shift starts, and then leaves 1 hour early and clocks out via his phone again. 2. New access codes to vending machines, so he was stealing change out of them. Not all of it, but enough for discrepancies to be noticed. 3. Put paper towels on light bulbs in the bathroom. Stuffed paper towels down sink in break room so that he could be the hero who noticed the stuff prior to it causing a disaster. 4. General disrespect for his fellow employees. 5. Taking care of lax overtime policies and not actually working the overtime. This just happened. I was working for a small startup with an absolute C-word of a boss. He'd yell, demand 110% from his employees while he could barely afford to pay us. Paychecks were never on time, and he'd constantly demean me. He was an all-around misogynist. I talked back one time. When he asked me, how often are you on time to work, and I responded, how often do we get paid on time, and the next day he texted me to bring my keycard and keys to work and fired me. Good riddance. I've never felt better. It seriously felt like I was released from prison. I saw someone get fired on the spot because he said he wanted to rage F a co-worker of ours. He was an idiot. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I got someone fired on the spot. As a kid, I went to the library on my bike and it got stolen. Months later, I saw it in the back of a friendly's near the employee parking. I called the police since I'd already filed a report with them. Easy to identify since it had some pretty unique features, like a custom valve cap I found once, and the handbrake on the left side didn't work. Police asked the manager if he knew who came in on the bike, and he said it was one of the cooks. They informed him it was stolen from me, so the manager called him over and berated him pretty badly while they put cuffs on him and promised to call all the other local restaurants so they wouldn't hire him either. Pretty sure he said, "I knew you were a fricking loser, but stealing a kid's bike? Really? You're 25, you prick." I think he ended up getting community service. I was already quitting. I put in my 30 days when working for an IT consulting firm, while I was allocated to work in a financial institution. I hated it there. I'd been there for 3 months, but I'd been working for the consulting firm for 1.5 years, and I got a much better offer to move up to project management, which was an amazing step for me. The financial institution was notified that I'd put in my 30 days during my lunch hour by the consulting firm. I was told I could leave when I came back from lunch. The consulting firm let me go as well, since they wouldn't need me for anything else just for those 30 days. Which was cool. I called my new boss and he told me I could start sooner if I wanted to. Took a 1-week vacation between jobs and then I started. I worked in a medical office, trying to be vague about the specialty, and the doctor was doing horrifically illegal things that were putting patients at risk for damages and disease. Things like having an unlicensed employee performing duties that they shouldn't be and not practicing proper hand washing or instrument sterilization, among other things. Not to mention the doctor was rude and would frequently yell at staff. During my employment, I brought attention to things that were being done and confronted the doctor in front of the rest of the staff. She fired me on the spot. I'd been keeping record of infractions as they were revealed, and a lot of the more awful things that were hush-hush, and I turned them into the office of the Attorney General in my state. Just a few weeks ago, I found out that the doctor has been telling people that I was fired for trying to recruit people into a cult. I'm an atheist. My job had people come and go like it was a drive-through. We had one guy who was down that same path. He came in and started cutting the pizzas. I was helping him and he was a nice guy. Skip forward a couple of weeks and this guy is a master. Even during rush, he still has time to pick up orders. The manager comes in and asks him how he's liking his job. He says that he's glad he works there. Manager fires him on the spot. We get a new guy in and the cycle continues. I was working in a USPS priority shipping center during Christmas break from college back in 2002. It's fairly brutal work, tossing packages non-stop for an entire 8-hour shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I know, it's not a gulag or anything, but to a spoiled 20-year-old at the time, I recall hating it. So there's this massive conveyor belt structure that basically runs the entire length of this titanic warehouse. It's huge, kid, and they would store a ton of carts and other miscellaneous junk under there for storage. So naturally, I took to hiding out underneath it whenever the opportunity arrived. Pretty shifty thing to do, but alas, I was young and foolish. This went on for a good week when I decided to get bold and took to laying down inside a pushcart and covered myself up for what I'd hoped would be a brief nap. It's loud and a little cold, so I thought I'd be good. But nope. Slept for a good 4 hours only to awaken to a search party sent out to see if I'd died under the belt. The boss applauded my bold action but showed me the door all the same. Haha, pretty cool boss to actually credit you on getting out of your crappy job even as he gave you the boot. Sounds like he probably understood it wasn't a fun place to be. Not all antagonists are mean. At a place where I worked, people came to me saying someone was making creepy comments about my body, and they'd told HR about it, so when I got called in, I said, well, yeah, that makes me uncomfortable, and the person got fired on the spot. It was a huge deal because everyone knew about it. I'd only been working there for a little less than a year, and they'd been there for over 10. Almost a decade ago, I was in my apprenticeship to become an electrical planner. I'm Swiss. Over here, your first apprenticeship is very important, and it's hard to get any job at all if you don't have at least one apprenticeship done. As a result, there was big pressure in my last year of school to get a place. Initially, I wanted to do computer technician, but I just couldn't land a hit, so I had to start looking into other jobs. Eventually, I landed a job as an aforementioned planner. Let's not mince words. Not only did I hate the actual work right away, I also hated my boss, and most of my co-workers. Initially, I just thought I would soldier my way through. Finishing your first apprenticeship is so important. I managed a little more than a year before I started to get depressed, to the point that my parents were starting to notice and my mother got on my case. I started missing work. I had a doctor that was very liberal in handing out a sick notice for 1 to 2 weeks straight, so I'd work for a month or so, miss like 10 days of work, and then work another month or so. My grades started to drop and I actually started to give my boss and co-workers lip for being so crappy to me. For context, I was a glorified maid. Every morning I had to take a 20-minute trip to the local bakery and get everyone their foodstuffs for the break. I frequently got shouted at if the stuff they wanted was already sold out. Well, why didn't you leave earlier? Because I'm already leaving almost an hour before the break actually starts. And then people would complain that the stuff wasn't warm anymore. Then twice a day I had to make coffee for everyone. They'd frequently change their mind on the order and then berate me for screwing stuff up. Often they'd complain even if I did exactly as they asked. You put too much sugar in. No, you just can't properly decide on how much you want. You asked for 3 and I put in 3. And probably the most offensive, I just couldn't do anything right. I was an apprentice. I earned maybe 1/10 of what the others made. And part of that deal is that you're allowed to screw up and then taught how to do it properly. No such luck, I was basically required to learn everything by myself or Google it, and then I'd get 60-minute sessions of beratement for not doing the work properly. The final straw was on a Friday. I had to leave around 4 p.m. at the latest so I could catch my train home. So I started cleaning everything at around 3 p.m. 5 minutes before I planned to leave, I just finished cleaning the office floor, whereafter one of my co-workers walks in wearing muddy and snowy shoes. It was February, I think, ruining the entire floor all over again. I packed my stuff. The boss came in and demanded I stay to clean up. I don't remember my exact words, but it was said very loudly and would probably get me banned from most places online if I put it in the story. When I came back on Monday, my boss told me to get out immediately. I remember laughing the whole way home. I was free. Probably one of the best days of my teenage life. Joke's on him anyway. I still had a bunch of stuff I was supposed to bring to the post office in my backpack. Held on to it for a few weeks in case they asked for it and then ritually burnt it in the hopes of some elder god smiting the office. It didn't happen, but it was satisfying nonetheless. Not me, but my co-worker at Subway got fired after giving her friend free food and paying for it immediately afterwards. Perfect. This just happened to me in September. I was a marketing manager at a fairly large digital advertising agency. I showed up to work on Wednesday at the same time I always did. Nothing out of the ordinary. My direct manager from the office up north was in for a strategy meeting. He and I sat down with my team and did some Q2 number reviews, goal setting, strategy for the remainder of 2018, talked about the pros and cons and how hopeful and optimistic he was. Then it was back to work as usual. About 2 hours later, he calls me into the conference room. I bring my laptop to take notes and figure we're going to go over more numbers or something. I look to my right at the end of the long conference room table, and the SVP of operations was sitting there, albeit with an uncomfortable, scared look on his face. They tell me to close the door. My manager said, "We've decided today is your last day." Didn't really give me any good reason why, but I found out it was a few days before earnings call and they'd missed their projected quarter numbers, and I was the most expensive employee on the team. I didn't push the crappy store credit cards enough. I was pulled off the till by a manager and he asked why I didn't try to sign the customer up for a card. He was watching us. I told them the customers don't want them, or should we push them? I'm sure if they want them, they'll ask. I was pulled into the office and fired or, quote, laid off because they didn't need extra staff, and that I was a problem child, as he worded it, because screw actual customer service and making sure the store doesn't look like a war zone. Look who's laughing now, Sears. This was 7 years ago. 6 months was way too long to work at a crap place like that. They destroyed themselves. I'm glad so many others have the same opinion. They preyed on people who didn't understand credit terms, who had bad credit, or were new to the country. How can you sign someone up so quickly for a crazy high-interest card and have a conscience? Daily, we had people coming to the register with bills not knowing what they were getting billed for, or totally confused by the card and getting angry by the high interest and card fees. I was told by management when I was fired that in 6 months I'd only signed up or did applications for 3 people, when it should have been closer to 1,300. Yes, 1,300. Even though so many of my shifts were before store hours doing price changes or cleaning. The store could look like a bomb went off and they'd rather push crappy cards. I got in trouble because I spent so much time helping customers and cleaning up the clothing. Yes, for things most stores require. My mum, brother and I were at Olive Garden about 20 years ago. We had the worst waiter in the history of the world. He was outrageously rude to the point of being downright mean to us. At the end of the dinner, my mum left him a dime for a tip, and as we were leaving, the waiter threw the dime at my mum. I was a little kid, otherwise I probably would have at least attempted to defend her. The waiter's boss saw the dime throw and fired the waiter on the spot. Everyone has a bad day, but that guy was just awful. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.